For racing drivers, there's a handful of bucket list international tracks: Spa, Le Mans, Monza, Sebring, Bathurst, and maybe the greatest of them all, the Nürburgring. For nearly a century, the German Green Hell stood as perhaps the most monumental challenge. Hundreds of corners, over 20 kilometers, hundreds of meters of elevation change, the Nürburgring was and is a true colossus of motorsport. For drivers of the Race Sim Canada Endurance Series, it's round 3 of 5 in the 2021 championship. Road America, Sebring, now off to Germany, and the Nürburgring GP course for round number 3. Kyle Heyer alongside Tom O'Gorman for the third round of the 2021 Apex V2R Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series. Tom, welcome back. You missed round 2 at Sebring, where we had DJ Alessandrini, Austin Cobb of Grid Life RWB take home the victory. Now to round 3 here in Germany, our first trip overseas. Welcome back.
Yeah, sad to miss that one, but thrilled to be back for this afternoon's 2-hour endurance race, and we'll be very interested to see if anybody can dethrone that car. If you've been with us the whole season, it was actually on target to win both races, lost out on the win in race number 1, finally took their win in race number 2. And I have a little what do you call that? The scuttlebutt that the teams are a little tired of seeing that Ferrari up at the front. There's a whole lot of Porsches, a couple of Corvettes as well that would love to take that top spot back.
Qualifying is underway here, Tom, but the Nürburgring GP course, this is the one with the fast chicane here tonight. This is a really, really fast, engaging FIA Grade 1 circuit. Take me through a lap.
Well, it's cool because it changes directions so many times, which makes great racing. So you start on a long front straightaway with a very early start-finish line. Check out how early that is. A long run down into turn number 1, a very tight hairpin into the stadium section, a sweeping turn 2, increasing radius down into a decreasing radius turn number 3 before opening up at turn 4 into the GP circuit, a switchback at turn 6 and 7 down to the hairpin at turn 8, and then the Schumacher S's turns 9 and 10. 11 and 12, you notice there's a lot of sequences of 2 corners here, back and forth. Then the back straight through turn 13, a slight kink, and then the fastest chicane of 14 and 15. The final corner of turn 16 might be where this race is decided, depending on how quickly you can get through that final chicane.
120 minutes, 2 hours worth of racing coming up here in just a few minutes. First up, though, is qualifying, Tom. We're on the fastest lap that you can. We've got just over 20 teams here today, 22 by my count. They're down on the racetrack and getting underway, and trying to find clean racetrack here is fairly easy. This is a fairly long circuit as well. There's the RSCC team, Timothy Salvatore behind the wheel of that, the number 1 overtake racing out on track in the BMW M8. We're running GT Endurance category race cars here today, Tom, and we've got a handful of different manufacturers, and they're all quite different. Porsche being the kind of rear mid-engine, BMW front engine, the Chevrolet, sort of that new mid-engine C8 platform, and a couple Ferraris out there as well.
And the Ferrari, of course, is the one most recent race winning, but the variety is heavily leaning towards the Porsche. You take a look down on the left side of your screen, there's a whole lot of those Porsche emblems on the left side there, and these cars tend to be kind of the most go-to favorite just because they sound so cool, but they also drive really, really nice. And these GTE cars are monsters. They have a little bit of traction control and driver aids, but they have absolutely no ABS. They are very downforce reliant. They're pretty light, and really, really fast and flowy tracks like this one, they're very much at home. So I think these guys are really going to enjoy this one.
There's Timothy Salvatore coming across the line and heading down the hill here into turn number 1 for the first time on a flying lap. Bit of a lockup there on the inside right front. That turn 1, Tom, on lap 1, the opening lap, the run down there is often pretty tedious as a driver, especially in the mid-pack. You got to watch both sides to make sure that you're not going to get door slammed down there. How tricky is it to enter turn 1 down there in a hairpin?
Well, it's really tricky, especially because they almost bait you into making a mistake. It gets a lot wider through the entire braking zone, so the start-finish straightaway is a fixed width all the way down to about the braking point, and then they add about 3 car widths to the track, so you can really get baited into making a mistake. There you see how much it opens up. If you go all the way to that driver's right side grass, and all of a sudden you get to the apex and you have any amount of speed, you're going to shoot wide, so you'll find drivers almost dropping to no mile an hour just to keep it tight to the inside, drivers sweeping the outside trying to carry speed, and the other interesting point is it's a right-hander that leads into a left, so oftentimes the driver that carries that outside corner inherits the inside for turns 2 and 3 and will take the position.
And then the left-hander turn 2 kind of leads into another left-hander here at turn 3 before that kink back to the right. So a lot of good passing opportunities here if you can get to the inside of somebody, but you got to get it done quick. Otherwise, they'll do the over-under on you by the end of the lap. First lap's down on the timing and scoring. It's Austin Cobb for Grid Life RWB, a 150.64. This team was super strong at Sebring and came out on top, Tom, but as the other teams might be upset that they came in here and dominated. Remember, they're not eligible for the season prizing, being drivers comprised of all Americans, so they cannot compete for the season prizing. So does the goalpost shift to beat the top Canadian team, or does it still bother you that there's someone beating you?
I have to imagine it's a little bit of both. I mean, you want to win on the track, but at the end of the season, when you win the prize of getting to go out and drive a car on a real racetrack, even if you finish second in the video game, that's not going to feel all that bad. And while this is very much real racing and very much real competition, at the end of the day, it is still a simulator. These guys are sitting in their houses. So the driver that gets to go out and drive that real race car, drive that real track car, that's a pretty big win, I would say.
I'd say so. There's Alex Ellis pulling out of pit lane. Their VRS Satellite Racing red team is currently in second, 151.43. Remember that round 4 was going to take us to Watkins Glen, but round number 5 is still up for vote. And the fan vote for round number 5 is live on the RaceSim Canada Facebook page. And your options are Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Circuit of the Americas, Hockenheim, Daytona, and Spa. So make sure you go and vote for what track you want to see for round number 5. I might lean heavily towards the first 2 of those options, Tom, but between Mosport, COTA, Hockenheim, Daytona, and Spa, do you have a favorite that you'd like to see?
Well, it's definitely an easy choice for me. Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, is my favorite track I've ever driven, regardless of what car it was or what circumstance it was. So that would be my pick, and that is not just because we are here on RaceSim Canada for this endurance series based out of Canada. It just so happens that is also my favorite racetrack.
They call that pandering, Tom. That's what that's called.
There's no pandering here. I just love that racetrack. It's so cool. So that's my vote.
All right. Well, again, here at Nürburgring, I always love that. Our font doesn't read the U with the umlaut over the top of it, so it always ends up with a question mark there. Again, Kyle Hire alongside 4-time IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge race winner Tom O'Gorman here tonight. You were down in Mid-Ohio racing this weekend, so you're coming back from that later this evening. Then you got a busy weekend next weekend as well, up at NCM Motorsports Park. Well, I should say down at for the Canadians watching. You'll be racing your Honda S2000 with a new Honda motor put in it this week, so that's exciting.
For the first time, I'm so excited. Absolutely cannot wait to get that car back out, and for the first time since November. But I've certainly been keeping myself fresh as much as I can here in iRacing and whatever other simulator I can get my hands on. A little bit less so now that we've been traveling a little bit more and going out to the track and doing a lot of racing and coaching myself, but it's kind of nice to have had that resource all the time for this off season and for especially times when we weren't allowed to travel or even allowed to have an event. Having this iRacing competition to keep yourself fresh has been super, super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, and too bad for the Screeching Moose Motorsports folks. They couldn't make it here tonight, but they'll be watching from home. No changes at the top of the qualifying order right now. It's still Cobb and Ellis, 1 and 2. Caden Bin in 3rd right now, the 883 Apex V2R car. Is this a new entrant? I believe we only had 880, 881, and 882. I feel like this is a new entrance this week, and Caden Bin, not a driver that we've seen before.
Yeah, I know back at Road America on the season opener, we did have 3 of those Apex V2R cars. So if there are 4 now, then it is certainly a new entry. And maybe that has a little bit to do with everybody being tired of that Ferrari at the front. Maybe the Apex V2R guys are they're teammates with Austin Cobb and DJ Alessandrini in other series. They're looking like maybe we can just pile everybody on and quantity over quality, perhaps we can come out on top.
Well, I don't see an 882 car, so I still think we just have 3. By my count, but that's still pretty strong amount of cars to have by any racing team standards. Matt Corrence in the 880 right in front, so teammates sort of working together here, Tom. At a track like this, the Nürburgring, not a ton of long straightaways, so does the slipstream help you here at all, or would you rather have clear racetrack?
It does just a little bit in the racing itself, down this, especially this long straightaway where you can see these guys kind of jockeying for position. There's a kink there at turn 13, but this is all flat out running. But in general, I don't know that the draft is significant here. What I do know is that the tires for these cars tend to be fastest on the very first lap, and it looks like these guys are sorting themselves out to start a flyer. I don't know if they just left pit lane and are on a warm-up, or perhaps just trying to cool the tires off before setting up for another go. Here's Matt Corrence tucked in behind his teammate, and they are going for the draft, which, I mean, it can pay off, but it is also a very high-risk, high-reward maneuver, because if the car in front makes a mistake, both cars ruin their lap.
Down into turn 1. Hard on the brakes, and they're going to get through nicely. A little bit of a lockup there for one of the 2 Apex V2R cars. On just one lap out, though, one little lockup probably isn't going to hurt you very much, but if you continue to lock up that inside right front tire down there, Tom, it's going to wear out or at least heat up that tire. And here in iRacing, hot tires get greasy real fast, and it can make your day pretty miserable. Matt Corrence dropping off the teammate at the exit of the arena section.
Yeah, I lost the back end just a little bit coming down into turn number 3, and you're right, the simulator here does not simulate flat spots, but it does simulate tire wear, and as long as you're dragging that tire, locked up the tire, on a 2-hour race, these cars really do need to manage their tires just a little bit, and if you're locking up a lot, that'll just kind of exacerbate that tire wear, so you got to be very careful. And I think that this track may not be the best track for the Porsche just because this car is a mid-rear engine, as close to a rear engine as you can get while still being kind of in the middle of the car. And its strengths really lie in kind of pointing and shooting, and this is a much faster, flowier track. I do think that the Lamborghini and the Corvette may be the better platform for this track, and so far Austin Cobb is proving that.
So looking at the top of the order, there is only one Ferrari in the top 15, and that is the Grid Life RWB team with Austin Cobb behind the wheel, also teamed up with DJ Alessandrini. VRS Satellite Racing Red with Ellis still second. The 883 Apex V2R car still third, and it's Gavin Sanders in the SPI Racing Porsche, followed up by Matt Corrence. Daniel Morad, the VRS Satellite Racing Blue team in the first C8R. Now, this is a relatively new car here to iRacing, and this has been kind of a weird one, Tom. It's run very well, but it hasn't really yet shown all of its strengths. There's a handful of them scattered throughout the field, but we haven't seen them grouped together like the Porsches. It seems like the teams are a bit more spread out, trying to get acclimated to this platform versus one of the others.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this car hit a really big hit, obviously, when it first came out, but then has since lulled off as they've maybe found that it's not necessarily the outright fastest car, but I do think it is a very good long stint car, and I actually had the chance maybe a couple weeks ago to do an endurance race in GTE cars at this exact track in a Corvette, and that was our team car. So I really enjoyed driving the car. It was very, very consistent. I find that it's among the most drivable of the GTE cars, maybe comparable to the BMW, but it is very much a fun car to drive, and that's why I say I do think that this car really does cater well to this circuit, along with the Ferrari. But interesting to see it's still only in 6th place, and Daniel Morad is an extremely experienced driver, races in the IMSA WeatherTech series here in the United States. I'm sure he has professional racing experience in Canada as well. Probably, most likely, will be taking part in IMSA's Pro iRacing Invitational coming up here in a little while. And you know he's getting everything out of the car.
Absolutely. There's Harris Fellows Racing, a new entrant at Sebring. Mark Harris in the number 12, and another one of those C8Rs. They're running in 10th, right behind RSC's C team. That's Timothy Salvatore up in 9th. Night Blind Racing in the first of the BMWs. Now, this car, everyone jokes, is so big and huge, Tom, but it's not a bad race car by any stretch. And Night Blind Racing right now bringing it to 11th quick, but they could probably go a little faster.
Perhaps. I mean, obviously there's 10 more cars in front of them, but they are the quickest BMW. It's, as we say, that Event Matrix picks up the top BMW honors. They're up to 11th without a pole behind the wheel. So those BMWs duking it out, but it's looking like they're both having the same problem getting into the top 10. And you're right, they joke that it's massive. It's not necessarily heavy, though. It is just big. But also pay attention when we start this race. The Porsche is really not a small car, and especially with the width that the Porsche carries. Yeah, the BMW is big, but the Porsche is also a massively wide car. It's going to make the Corvette and the Ferrari look pretty small between these two.
So at the start of the race, we're going to get a pretty good idea of the short run versus long run pace. But every time we enter a race any longer than one fuel stint, Tom, we start to get into fuel strategy and how long these cars can run on fuel. And that was sort of a topic of discussion in recent weeks was are these races turning into fuel mileage races, and which cars have the advantage there? And I would argue that the advantages are so minuscule, but they will add up over the course of a race. And it seems like the Ferrari guys, the Grid Life RWB team, figured out how to do it the best at Sebring. But I think that's an ever-present challenge everyone's always trying to overcome, is how can we make the fuel last a little bit longer? Where can we be more efficient? Where can we stay in the slipstream over the course of this 120-minute race?
Yeah, it's always an interesting discussion, especially here in the simulator, because there are no full course cautions. So fuel management is a key, and tire management is as well, but there is a factor that is not present here in this endurance racing that would be otherwise. So that is always an interesting thing to figure out. Does it actually matter if I'm saving fuel? But the other interesting thing is that these drivers had to choose, or these teams had to choose their car coming into the season. And to talk about, I guess, our most successful team to this point is that Grid Life Red, White, and Blue team. They picked the Ferrari just because it's really strong at Road America. That was the week that the car was racing at Road America in the official series. It translated really nicely to this series, and I think they're kind of just dealing with it for the rest of the season. Then it's down to where can I maximize my car's strengths and weaknesses in the races. at all these different tracks. Sure, this car might have been the best race car over 2 hours at Road America, but it may not be at the rest of these tracks. And sure, they've got raw pace. As the VRS Satellite Racing Blue team brings their Corvette up pretty close, though, I don't know that that raw pace matters a whole lot in terms of a race distance.
They did improve last time by, got to a 151.135, but looking at the times, that Ferrari out front is still almost half a second faster than everybody else. It's a pretty sizable gap considering that that same gap farther back from second will get you all the way back to sixth. So there's a pretty big difference between first and second right now. But you mentioned raw pace. Raw pace at the beginning of a race is not necessarily indicative of long-term pace. I don't think that Alessandrini and Cobb are weak in that mark by any regard, but I don't necessarily think that the qualifying session is truly indicative of how this car is going to race, especially at a track that might be a bit weaker for them as compared to something like Road America. So still yet to be seen. 5 minutes left here in qualifying. Never Quit Racing with Tony Kloosterman out there running 8th right now in one of those Porsches, and a nice livery on this car that they've had for simability. And they're chasing down the Grid Engineering car of Christopher Roberts, another good-looking car. And we know how good Christopher Roberts is. We've seen him all over iRacing.
Yeah, he's also another spectacular driver. Actually kind of surprised to not see this driver in one of the Apex V2R cars, because I think they often do endurance racing on the iRacing official races together with the V2R guys. So maybe a bit of branching off, trying to run their own operation a little bit. And the only thing that comes to mind with that is perhaps setups. Are they still sharing setups if they're not on the same team? And that brings me back to the conversation about kind of drivability versus raw speed. Here in qualifying, you don't need a whole lot of drivability. If you can turn in a fast lap, it's very successful. But for the longer race, you definitely want some drivability in the car. And if your car is set up for raw pace, it's almost likely to induce a mistake at some point. So you have to kind of have both setups ready for these kind of cars. Ooh, close stuff behind Chris Roberts there with the first of the BMWs. Event Matrix almost getting in the back of them. But it's definitely a lot of moving parts coming into this race.
Yeah, there is Adam Pohl in that Event Matrix car. You mentioned the close call. Let's have a look at what that looked like. Following him into turn number 1. On the brakes a little bit later. Oh, and just escaped at the last possible second. But you're sort of daring each other every time you go into the braking zone that tight, Tom. It's just, you're looking out the, if you're running side by side, you're looking out the window and you're just expecting the other driver to brake first because you want to go that 10 feet deep.
And it's also downhill, so you brake at a certain point, but the visibility down into that corner is so hard, and the apex is completely blind. It falls away with a lot of terrain there, or a lot of elevation, I should say. I think it's probably something like 10 to 12 feet, just literally at the apex curve, just falls away from you. So the visibility down into turn 1 is super hard, even by yourself, let alone when you're coming into a field of 22 cars.
Updates on Grid Engineering. Got some information that Grid Engineering is a product partner. The Apex V2R sells their products exclusive in Canada, so helped out the grid with some of the drivers, and good to see them represented here. I love the color scheme on this car as well. The gray, black, and green is really slick. So cool to see them line up here on the grid. About 2.5 minutes left here. That means that every driver will get basically one more lap if they're on track right now. And then we're going to set the grid. But I'm just curious. We actually saw the Grid Life RWB cars go even faster. They just picked up a little bit more time. They only like about a couple thousandths, but a 150.6. Last time out, they increased their gap there, Tom. They're doubling down on the speed that they've got.
They are, and one thing that's going to be interesting of just in talking to a couple of these drivers, specifically DJ Alessandrini, he did not get much opportunity to practice for this race, is actually strategically having Austin Cobb start so that he can go play with this car offline and practice up for his stint. So maybe a little chink in the armor for the Grid Life RWB team. You guys need to get an easier name to say than that. I'm struggling over here, but perhaps maybe the stronger driver actually starting this race for that team just because of the lack of practice for the finishing driver.
The Grid Life RWB YXZH team.
Yeah. I'll just go Grid Life hubba bubba bubba.
There you go. Right now it's Ferrari, Chevy, then a whole bunch of Porsches, and the first non-Porsche driver outside of the front two is the Harris Fellows Racing car down in 10th. Here's Daniel Morad, the second place VRS Satellite Racing blue car, the Chevrolet. This is going to be their final lap here. Their best time so far is a 151.135. Oh, bit of a slide there up onto the curbing. And we'll see if Morad can go quicker and dethrone Austin Cobb here. But so far, I'm liking to look at that Grid Life Ferrari up front.
Nice and smooth, though. Very, very on the limit. And there is something in them Schumacher S's we should talk about before the race starts, because it's inevitably going to happen with the cut penalties. There's a good look at it. So on the left side of your screen, we're looking down into the Schumacher S's with cars going to be coming at us. If the car crosses with all 4 tires onto the curbing here on driver's right, you get a cut penalty, which means a timer pops up on your screen. It's usually about a second, and you have to bleed that timer down in real time on the racetrack if you cross over that. So you can see just how hard these drivers are flirting with that limit. The cars are actually flat out up this S's when you're by yourself, but in the wash of the arrow, a car in front of you can push you a little bit wide, and all of a sudden you have to lift off the throttle for a full second to bleed that time down, and then you can resume. So it's a really high-risk spot to be in these cars, especially knowing that you can go flat, but maybe not always.
VRS Satellite Racing Blue did go faster, but just by a touch, a 151.017. A couple other cars, I think, might have gotten one more lap to go around. That's the Grid Engineering car, Christopher Roberts in command. Looks like he's going to pull off as well, and I think most of the teams are going to call it a day there for qualifying. So at the top board, it's Grid Life RWB, a 150.61. A 151.02 is the next best by the VRS Satellite Racing Blue car of Daniel Morad, then VRS Satellite Racing Red. Logan Paxa in the number 17. Then SPI Racing with Gavin Sanders and Caden Bin in the Apex V2R 883. They're going to roll off in 5th should nothing else change here. Surprised at how little things changed over that entire qualifying session, Tom. Not a lot of shuffling. You think the race is going to look similar, or do you think it's going to look a lot different? We'll see some positions change early.
Well, I think we'll see which drivers emphasize their race pace and race setup versus the drivers that emphasized, or teams that emphasized, that qualifying effort. But again, these cars are fastest right out of the gate, and the drivers are certainly well practiced. This is a series where the drivers are all very experienced. So I'm not totally surprised to see a lack of shuffling, especially right at the front, but I don't think it will last quite so picture perfect throughout, especially the top 10.
Tough qualifying session for 613 Racing, both Alpha and Bravo. Antoine Decache in the number 10, they're down in 19th place. Paulo de Souza in the other car, down in 21st place. NASCAR NSS with Ronnie Wimberly, they are down in 22nd. So 22 teams going for the gold here this afternoon in a 120-minute race. It's all going to kick off here in just a moment. And once we turn them loose, Tom, there's no slowing down, no going back. And it's a 2-hour sprint to the end. We'll have our next race next month at Watkins Glen International before rounding out our season. This is getting a little scrappy here at the end of qualifying. 17 car on the inside is the 3rd place car. That's the VRS Satellite Racing Red, and they might have been improving, but with that traffic holdup, they're probably not going to go faster.
No, but that just is a little bit of a foreshadowing for how when cars get side by side here at the Nürburgring GP circuit with all of the switchbacks, lefts and rights, lots of fast sweepers. Really, they're more sweepers than they are chicanes. Once things go side by side here, they often take a number of corners to sequence out, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
I don't think they're going to get back to the stripe either. I'm not sure they can get back there in time to complete this lap. I'm not sure if they even took it in time to get a lap in, but they're trying at the very least, and they will definitely not make it back to the stripe. So Grid Life RWB with Austin Cobb, they're going to start on pole. You mentioned Alessandrini going to sit out the first stint of this race just to get some practice in the meantime. And we're going to head down to the racetrack and get the race set up and gridded. We'll have a look here at our weather information as well before we turn them loose for 120 minutes. Heading down to the racetrack here, here's a look at the weather this afternoon. It is a 78-degree air temp day, but look at the track temperature, Tom. 113, that's pretty toasty.
Well, I remembered back to, again, I mentioned I just did an endurance race here myself with a different series, and we were running 148s in qualifying. I was wondering, why are these drivers so slow? But that is why. 113, now 112 degrees on the track. These are going to be very slippery conditions, which is going to make braking with no anti-lock brakes hard, but it's also going to make putting power down, even with the driver aids, very challenging.
We don't have a lot of time to warm up tires either before we head into turn number 1. So if you got to get it done fast, because when you go down into turn 1, you're going to want all the tire and brake heat that you can get to make sure that you're not locking up and ending your race before it even started. And that's been sort of a common theme in these races is early incidents you can rebound from, but the later and later that you have those incidents, the less chance you have to make up. But you can't go down into turn 1 and crash your car, because then you'll be slow for the rest of the day. So if you're going to make a mistake, make it early, but don't make a mistake that damages your race car.
Yeah, or just don't make a mistake.
That too.
I think that most of these drivers are probably thinking right now, and I do have to imagine, as you mentioned, body damage is a massive effect here on these cars. You need the downforce, you need the straight line speed, and there's just not a lot to be paid off by charging down into this turn number 1, specifically here at the Nürburgring with it being that hairpin.
Well, remember that the vote for round number 5 for the track that this series is going to run is live on the Race Sim Canada Facebook page. Mosport, Coda, Hockenheim, Daytona, or Spa are the choices and selections. Make sure that you head there to vote and select which track we are on for the 5th and final round. Let's have a look at our starting lineup here. It's all going to kick off on row number 1 with Austin Cobb. He's going to be the front driver, and for Grid Life RWB, VRS Satellite Racing Blue with Adam Crane is going to start on the outside of row 1. Then row 2, VRS Satellite Racing Red, SPI Racing. Behind them, Apex V2R, all row 3. The 883 and 880 share that third row. Then in row number 4, it's going to be the Grid Engineering, number 20, and MC Motorsports in the number 66. Never Quit Racing in the 121, and Harris Fellows Racing in the Chevrolet. They will start in row number 5. Apex V2R 881 alongside RSC C Team down to 11th and 12th. LSM Team and Average J Racing, the BMW and Ferrari sharing row number 7. Then Event Matrix, Night Blind Racing in 15th and 16th. With NSS Cookie Jar just here for SR in row number 9. Then 613 Overtake, 613 Racing Bravo, and NASCAR NSS, the rest of the field. Out of the final corner, time to go racing for 2 hours. The Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series brought to you by Apex V2R. Green flag flies, and we're racing at the Nürburgring. Lots of shuffling and shifting heading down into the corner. Everybody fanning out. 2 wide so far. RWB in first corner. Nice and clean so far here, Tom. Everybody taking their time.
I think Adam Crane almost got into the back of Austin Cobb, though, and Cobb did a really nice little trick there at the start. He capped the field pretty quick through the final corner, then backed him up and jumped the start right at the perfect moment to spread the field out quite a bit, which has paid off really nicely. Everybody's super clean. We're not even single file or double file until we get back out of the top 10 with, I think that's Tony Klusterman still side by side with one of the other Porsches, and then finally slots back in line. But this is a nice clean start, except for a very close moment between the Ferrari and Corvette down at turn 1.
Chris Jackson has jumped in that car, the 121, for Klusterman's team, so he is down in 11th. There's Average J Racing. They're a little, or on the inside rather, of the just here for SR number 87 Ferrari. They went a little bit wide. Oh, wrong car. Average J was the Ferrari. They went a little touch wide at the exit at turn number 6, and some lockup smoke into the hairpin down there. And don't want to damage those tires here early, but real slow for the 207 car leaving the corner, and it's stacking up the field behind them. Whoa, side by side there. There's the 87. Andrew Potter in command. Overtake Racing and Matthew Gilbert on the outside. He's going to go through. And just behind them, 613 Racing. Bravo with Mike Brownrigg behind them in the trailing Porsche. Ooh.
Big push as he's still trying to get the tires maybe up to temperature just a little bit. They don't need a lot. Again, they really just need an outlap, but this is essentially the outlap with how short the run-up was. So we'll drop to the caboose on the field as the orange Corvette slices across the nose. But again, picture perfect, nice and clean. And look at the breakaway. Austin Cobb has put about 10 car lengths on Adam Crane, as Crane had to balk down into turn number 1 and has fallen since even further. Now a drag race between Christopher Cook and the yellow Porsche up the inside for about 6th and 7th. And it is the yellow that takes the lead there. Swarm of Porsches into turn 1.
Yeah, that's Gavin Sanders in the number 8 SPI Racing car around the outside of Logan Paxa in the 17 VRS Satellite Racing red car. And then the MC Motorsports Porsche, you just saw it get around Emmett Savage. He's through, but it's 4 Porsches all battling for 3rd place right now. And Caden Bin is not happy that he got past. He'd like back by again.
Now it is Paxa Bin sandwich between Sanders in the middle. And he tried to keep the nose there coming out of the turn 3 into turn 4, but couldn't quite get the job done. The stadium section there at turns 1, 2, 3, and 4 are very interesting for racing as they cross back and forth between each other. But single file, once again, all Porsches screaming down the hill with one lone Corvette there in the middle of that pack. But I have to imagine the VRS Satellite Red team doesn't look to be the strongest car in this field, as SPI Racing with Gavin Sanders behind the wheel is looking pretty racy and is still clinging to the back bumper of that number 17 car. Ooh, a 17 flirting with track limits there.
And ran a little bit wide. Here comes Sanders up the inside on the brakes. Does the 17 maybe have a slowdown penalty? He's giving up a lot of time here, but just relinquishes one spot. Wow, behind him there was one car way offline. That was the 881 of Zach Vanier in the 881. He almost went off into the dirt. Managed to keep it on course with a little bit of pavement runoff. But this train of Porsches heading into the chicane area is very, very strong. And I think we're going to see a lot of shuffling here as everyone kind of establishes their pace.
And I don't know that the 17 has a cut penalty so much as just maybe picking and choosing his battles early on in this race. Again, it's a 2-hour race and we are less than 5 minutes in. So maybe it's just that VRS red car trying not to lose too much time as Gavin Sanders picked him off first. Paxa still drag racing now with Bin down up the inside. Bin has the preferred driving line. Whoa, the 66 of Cook also tries to go with, but now is stuck around the outside, and that is why this section of track is just so cool. Cook not able to keep the nose there.
Really like the look of the 66 early in the race here. Very aggressive, but he's getting the job done. I like the direction he's moving right now. Started this race in 8th. He's gained 2 spots, looking for a 3rd here. That would put him inside the top 5, and he will likely continue his climb in the early going. This car had a lot of pace at Road America as well. They found themselves in some issues later. Sebring wasn't amazing for them either, but I think the pace is there. It's just the consistency is not. We'll see if Cook and team can bring this MC Motorsports car home inside the top 5 or on a podium today.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, back at Road America, this car was involved in some collateral damage down into turn number 1, which took them basically out of the running, but they were also looking very similar to the way they are now with Christopher Cook. Very racy, picking off positions early in the race, and he's now looking inside of a top 5 potentially. Just behind them, Nick McMillan in the Grid Engineering car swapped spots with Christopher Roberts, who qualified that car, following behind the 880 of Savage. And kind of these little pairs of cars picking battles with each other.
And it's Savage in the 880, and think about the struggles that the Apex V2R team had at Road America as well, and they rebounded slightly at Sebring, but there were still so many missed opportunities at the first round of the season. They would still like to capitalize, and right now they've got a handful of their cars, all three of them, in fact, inside the top 10, but they'd probably like to have all 3 of them inside the top 5 at some point. Still some work to do to get there. Just behind, there's the 12 car rather, the Harris Fellows racing car. Mark Harris qualified this car. He started this car, began in 10th, now running 9th. So he's picked up a spot now in the slipstream with the 2 Porsches in front.
So he's just keeping 2 of those Corvettes. Racy stuff in front of him. This is where you just kind of back your braking zone up and look to capitalize on the opportunity. The 880 continues to lead this battle between the 2, but McMillan slices up the inside, tries to show the nose, maybe just rattle the VRS car, or the V2R car just a little bit, but not able to do it. And again, that Corvette just kind of looking into this battle for 7th and 8th. Really, the top 10 are starting to run away a bit.
Here's LSM team and Event Matrix 2, the BMW M8's going for a scrap for 13th and 14th. And I can't help but look at the timing and scoring tower and think that BMW is clearly not the car to have this week, Tom. 13th through 15th. And then another one down to 22nd. So I'm not sure that this has got to be a frustrating week for this car, even though it's really at its home track.
Yeah, it may be, and I missed Sebring, so I don't know how this car performed there, but it really was kind of nowhere at Road America as well. So even though this is a simulator, there is balance of performance that goes on, and it tends to be at the beginning of each season. We just started the season, very tight stuff, exiting the hairpin into the Schumacher S's between the 2 top BMWs here. But as you mentioned, the BOP for this car may just not be very favorable right now.
Look out to driver's left and a dive on the brakes, get some overlap before the corner. Bit awkward there, keeps it real tight and tidy. And now it's all 3 of the BMWs that were involved in that fight, all on top of each other. We're running out of racetrack, I think.
Yeah, these cars take up most of it in single file, as the internet would have you say, have you know at least. So Darren Roy on the outside gets a good run into the chicane to close this lap off, so he puts himself in the middle of this BMW sandwich, and unfortunately the car behind is starting to fall off just a little bit.
Steve Markovich in the LSM team car, then behind them Average J Racing, and here comes the 613 Racing Alpha team. Antoine Decache goes on through, picks up a spot. Here's that, wow, this is getting spicy. Emmett Savage, Nick McMillan, and behind them that's Mark Harris, all 3 drivers battling for 7th in turn 1.
Well, I think McMillan really wants this positioning, just can't quite figure out how to make it happen. He's going to try the over-under, gets a little bit of a run, almost slices the nose off the Corvette, but now gets the preferred line up the inside for turn number 3. And if he can keep that car picked to the inside, maybe do an over-under down to turn 4, not quite. But that Grid Engineering car does have potentially a bit of a run. Flashing the lights, McMillan is racing.
And look at Christopher Cook all over the back of Logan Paxa as well. This is getting very spicy very quickly here, guys. We're only 9 minutes in. I'm not sure I would be flashing the headlights this early, but clearly some urgency felt inside the top 10 here as these drivers continue to battle. McMillan, though, I think is definitely faster than Emmett Savage, but he's struggled to get around him. And Now downshifting, getting nice tight to the apex. A little bit of wobbly there, and heard a bit of a chunk out of the drivetrain as he got back to the power. I think he just sort of downshifted at a weird time and got the car all mixed up. Yeah,
and with how racy McMillan was, it actually kind of balked Harris a bit and has now put him in the clutches of Veneer in the 881. He's shaken him a little bit, but that Corvette almost fell back into the 10th position as you see McMillan still just trying to fill the mirrors, everything he can do. I will say from my firsthand experience of this race with similar cars in a different series, as I keep saying, it is very easy to defend here. If you have even not the fastest race car, if you put the car in the right places, it's extremely hard to make a move. And right now, it looks like Savage in the 880 has that pretty well covered.
It's just such a fast racetrack. I mean, there's a lot of corners that have some camber and banking to them, and you're really not stomping on the brakes a ton around here to the point where someone can get alongside you. And the straightaways are just not long enough to really be able to slipstream and get on by, except for maybe the front straightaway, and that's what Nick McMillan's trying here again. Goes to the left. Wow, that's tight into turn number 1. Tucks down to the apex, going to try to cross him over here. Here he is to the inside of turn 2. Had overlap there and backed out, couldn't do it.
Wow, and Savage is just completely ignoring any attack that McMillan has. It's not necessarily blocking, but he is making it very clear that he is going to race his line. And McMillan is being pretty respectful of that. He could potentially have forced that issue maybe a little bit up into turn number 1, but it would have ended in tears for both of them. So it's pretty smart to not force that issue only 10 minutes into a 2-hour race. But the other key here is getting off the corners. The corners are pretty fast themselves, but even here at turn 6, coming out of turn 8, a number of those corners are really, really critical to just get a good launch off of them. So if you can back your competition up coming into those corners and then squirt the car off the corner, you've basically protected yourself from any attack.
McMillan is definitely better down here on this end of the racetrack, and then he has an attempt to pass into turn 1, but once you get into that arena section, that's where Savage seems to do much better in the flatter sections of the race course. Oh, wow, that was a big jump for McMillan.
Yeah, he got light coming through the first part of the Schumacher S, and I have to imagine he was all 4 tires on the green stuff there, which is definitely going to be a cut penalty for that number, for that grid engineering car. Luck grabs too much inside curb, the car gets light, and there's going to be that heartbreaking cut, I think.
Yeah, he's definitely giving up time now, and he had to tuck in behind the 881 Apex V2R car. So McMillan definitely got up and got all 4 tires to the inside of the curb. You're generally okay there, Tom, until you get all 4 tires over the edge of the curb, and then you're giving yourself a cut course and giving up time.
Yeah, that's one of the keys with getting racy like that is the following car. As long as if you're the lead car in that, as the 880 was, you just kind of stay calm, cool, and collected, and you let the driver behind you get desperate, and all of a sudden they make that mistake. Christopher Cook lunges up the inside there for the 66 car. It's not going to help, and unfortunately slows them both down a little bit into turn number 1, but Cook is really, really, really wanting that top 5 spot right now.
Yeah, he's setting up Logan Paxa here through the left-hander and trying to cheat over to the left. And Apex a little later on the right-hander. Paxa uses more racetrack and gets away for the time being, but Cook is really good on the brakes so far, and that's traded him well to a couple spots, but he's been working over this VRS Satellite Racing red car for a handful of laps and hasn't figured out how to get by just yet. So the aggression is not getting him anywhere, but maybe persistence will.
Yeah, we're seeing these pairs of cars really have a hard time swapping positions. I think we have a number of cars that are faster than the car in front of them stuck. The only car that is not stuck, can we talk about Austin Cobb at the front of this field right now? About 5 seconds in the lead. Look at how that looks on the racetrack itself. And we've seen drivers maybe put the car on pole by 5 or 6 tenths of a second before. That's impressive in itself with a class as strong with BOP as this one is. The cars very similar to each other. But for that driver to come out and put in the first 5 or 6 laps almost a second per lap on this quality of field, he's just on another level right now for Grid Life RWB. The question is, will Alessandrini be able to continue to respond at that level, or will Cobb be able to even continue to lap at this pace, because this car is on fire right now?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Austin Cobb is definitely no slouch, but neither is anybody else in this series, and
exactly.
The fact that he's been able to put 5 seconds on him is pretty insane. Adam Crane running in second is not running that far off. Remember how hot the racetrack is. It's not a cool racetrack. It's not really favorable conditions, 111 degrees Fahrenheit. So managing tire temperature is also something that Austin can now do now that he's got a gap and can relax a little bit.
Yeah, he may have to do that too, because these cars will certainly in the middle of the stint, they get a little bit awkward when you have enough fuel in the car that it still drives a bit heavy, but the tires have started to fall off. You really got to be careful in that mid portion of the stint when the car's empty of fuel, no matter how bad the tires are, and when the car is full of fuel on fresh tires, both conditions are great. But in the middle of that stint, as the car is burning its fuel off and burning its tires off, they can really punish you a lot. So Austin's got to be prepared for that when that's coming up in the next, that's going to start kicking in here in the next 10 minutes.
On the brakes here, Christopher Cook following Logan Paxa, still has not managed to find a way around him for 5th spot. Other battles throughout the field. Here's the Event Matrix car, Adam Pohl and Darian Roy running 13th and 14th. Their upward mobility has sort of stalled behind Matt Jensen in the RSCC team car. That's a Porsche 911 RSR.
Well, thinking back to Road America, the BMW has really benefited off of attrition more than anything. And there hasn't been any yet, and we'll knock on wood for these drivers' sakes that there aren't throughout the entire race. But the Event Matrix car currently leads the way, having shuffled the LSM BMW back a couple of positions. The LSM car started as the top BMW, now runs 3rd in the BMW class of this race. It seems they may be in their own class just a little bit, down there in 13th, 14th, and 15th. But you can see Pohl just loses distance down the straights. Perhaps it's just a straight line speed problem with the BMW.
It could be. I'm going to ride on board here following Jensen and see if that Porsche is able to pull away. This is an area where this BMW should be able to slipstream and draft up to the back of the Porsche, make some initial gains here, and now the slipstream's really kicking in. He's able to close that gap. Has a look out to driver's left, but can't do much with it. And then this fast chicane, not really a passing opportunity by any mark. Just got to kind of follow in line there.
It's also a really tough spot to see. You're almost looking for that little pole at the apex of the first turn-in point as your reference, and you just got to guess. Now Christopher Cook continues, locks up the brakes, maybe a touch. No, they dodge each other, and Cook is just trying so hard in that 66 car to get by Paxa in the 17, but Paxa is still defending beautifully, runs a little bit wide, but keeps the point.
Yeah, Christopher Cook is really leaving nothing left on the table in terms of braking performance down in turn number 1. He's using every little bit of the rubber on these tires to get that car slowed down, but maybe too much perhaps. He's locked up that right front a couple times trying the same maneuver, and it's just so hard because that radius is so short, Tom, that if you try to pass on the inside, you're only doing 25 miles an hour, so it's difficult to get power down on exit and maintain enough speed to actually complete any sort of pass.
Yeah, and if you're not completely axle to axle with the car you're trying to attack, the car that has the nose ahead is almost always at an advantage coming into that corner, and that's not always the case. Big lockup from the Corvette. But that battle between Cook and Paxa is very reminiscent of the battle between McMillan and Savage, where McMillan started to get a little bit desperate, made a mistake, and dropped back a couple of positions. I hope for Cook's sake that doesn't happen to him as well.
There's McMillan. Meanwhile, back to Ben Matrix. Adam Pohl has gone through Matt Jensen and splits the Porsche. It's now a BMW sandwich with the Porsche in the middle. And now a defensive line into the left-hander. That's going to bring the Night Blind Racing car with Darian Roy behind the wheel up the inside. Had a look there. Not really a good opportunity to go by, so he'll tuck back in line in 14th. Back up to the 5th place battle. Again, a 2-hour race, Tom. We've got a pit window that opens with about 1 hour and 10 remaining in the race, so about a half an hour till we get there. But we're almost 20 minutes in. I think we've definitely had our leader established, but Christopher Cook wants to go by, and that's a huge lockup into turn 1, and just super struggling to get that car slowed down. It's just amazing to me how much he locks up there, Tom.
Yeah, that's the mistake out of desperation kind of kicking in. And actually watch in front as Paxa almost dives to a completely different trajectory coming into the corner, just into the braking zone. He didn't change lanes or anything. He didn't block. He just decisively pointed the car where he wanted to go. Maybe caught Christopher Cook off guard just a little bit. Cook locks up that front tire and loses a bunch of ground.
And still hasn't been able to complete. LSM team has had a spin in their BMW. I don't see any damage on this car. Let's go back and see. This is in the arena section, the first sector, and he was just offline big time and just didn't get turned down to the apex there, Tom. And just a slow, lazy spin, and there goes the 613 Racing Alpha car, Antoine Decache going by. But an early setback for the BMW, but like I said, you make a mistake early, you still got plenty of time to claw your way back from it.
Sure do, and it's easy to do there with that decreasing radius entry. You've got to trail brake the car deep into the corner. If you got a little too much rear brake bias, all of a sudden you're sliding, and there's just really no salvaging it. You got to slide to a stop and then try again. So now behind Matt Jensen, though, the BMW of Roy, the 02 car, flashing lights, maybe these BMWs have a bit more long race pace. Perhaps we're just kind of stabbing in the dark for where the strengths of the BMW might lie. Clearly a couple teams thought that they had some strengths in the BMW, but the Nightblind car is trying to put the pressure at least on the number 1 of the RSC SC racing team.
Up the road, Grid Life RWB continues to just absolutely lay down heaters. 6.7 is the lead that Cobb has established now, Tom. At what point is this an insurmountable gap if DJ doesn't just outright spin the car out?
It is starting to get to that point, and the roll has slowed just a little bit. It climbed to 5 seconds very quickly and has now stagnated from 5 to 6.5 over the last couple of laps. So at least Adam Crane has found some pace, or Austin Cobb has backed it down, turned the wick down just a little bit in that Ferrari. But I did talk to a couple of these drivers again, and they said that the Ferrari really has a lot of strength in digging off the corners, which kind of matches up why it was so strong at Road America as well. You have a couple of really low-speed digs, you just point and shoot that car, and it seems to really go. So I think that might be kind of why this car is going to be particularly strong here. We mentioned there's a number of those big digs, but also I think that car is going to race super well. So if they do come under any attack, I have to imagine they'll have the leg up in defending.
Nick McMillan got by the 881 Apex V2R car down in turn 1 a little while ago, and now just trying to hang on to that pass for position. Moves the Grid Engineering car up to 9th. He still hasn't recovered. Remember that little mistake that he made about, I don't know, 8 laps ago? Well, it cost him so much that he has not been able to dig himself out of that hole because the competition is so fierce. So you mentioned earlier, don't make any mistakes. Well, yeah, if you want to win this race, I don't think you can, unless maybe you're Austin Cobb and you've earned the right to make one at this point, probably.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think of it. You go real fast, so you earn the right to one mistake every once in a while. And interesting to see also, Adam Crane has put almost a similar distance on the 883 of Bin, so we have kind of almost 7 seconds between all of the top 3 cars before we get to our first battle. Oh, it's a mistake at the back, 2 cars involved.
Yeah, that is Mike Brownrigg in the 613 racing car, the Bravo team, and Overtake Racing with Matthew Gilbert. They got together exiting. Let's have another look at this. Heading down into the hairpin at the bottom end of the lap. The 613 car gets sideways beforehand. A little offline leaving. He just slows up. And Gilbert,
he realized he wasn't going to make the corner and just checked up, and all of a sudden got himself doored pretty hard by the BMW. I don't know that the BMW did much wrong there other than commit to the corner way before the Porsche did.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate, sort of awkward collision there, I'm sure. Although both these cars sort of took it like a champ, I think. Just a little bit of floor damage to the right side of the Porsche, but doesn't look super significant, so they should be able to continue. The unfortunate part is that they're going to continue right where they left off, down in 21st and 22nd, and right next to each other.
And for third place, I'm just watching the gap between Ben and Sanders, the 883 and the 8. Sanders is absolutely hounding the top running Apex V2R car as Ben has found his way up from, I think they started 5th or maybe even 6th in that 883 car. Yeah, 5th to 3rd, so this is a great run here, but absolutely no margin for error. He has not earned the right to a mistake, as we joked about before. The SPI racing car is keeping him honest.
Sure is. Pebbles flying there at exit corner. There's Nightblind Racing, RSCC team. There's pass for position. Move Nightblind Racing car up a spot. Keep our eye on that battle for third because it is sort of the hottest and closest battle on the racetrack other than Nick McMillan and the 881 Apex V2R machine, the sack behind the wheel. So two really good fights. McMillan, I've seen him using a lot more racetrack than other people, and that's what got him in trouble earlier. But especially in that chicane, really aggressive over the curbs. But if you can be aggressive and not step out of the boundary and just step to it, then you're going to be finding speed. Yeah, and
it's actually easier to do, surprising or not, I guess it's kind of an obvious statement, but it is easier to do in a lot of places here as the lead car, specifically in that final chicane, because as you're following somebody into that chicane, it's already fairly blind, but your reference points are just completely gone. You're looking at the rear wing of another car. So oftentimes that tends to be kind of the deciding factor for giving the car in the front of the battle a bit of a buffer coming onto the lap every single lap. And you have to kind of work your way back up to that car throughout the lap, and then it happens again there at the final point in that chicane. So I saw that happen just there with both the battles for third and the battle for ninth, where the car that is leading gains a bunch of car lengths into that final chicane just with the confidence to use the track.
Matt Jensen closing in back on Nightblind Racing's Darian Roy. No change for position there. Back up to third, Caden Bin and Gavin Sanders. Sanders has had some really strong rounds so far as well. Well in the points. This SPI Racing team car is in a great spot. Trailing in behind the third place car though, did one more spot and gets you up on top of the podium, but also fuel saving here, Tom. Following in behind, is there any urgency for Sanders to actually complete this pass, or would you rather follow in line and save some fuel?
No, you can really save a lot of fuel by following a car like this, and we'll be able to hear here if he's lifting at all, but this is also a good representation. Look at how much he cannot see. And remember, we're about 2 feet above the driver. We're on the roof of this car, so the driver can see even less coming into that final chicane. But going back to your comment about fuel saving, I do think that it benefits you, even though there's not a chance of a full course or anything like that. When you come into the pit lane, the less time you spend sitting still, it's going to benefit you for sure.
Turn one, Sanders lifting a little early. In line, no real need to pressure Bin any more than he already is, so he's going to stay there. The 17 car and the 66 continue the 5th place fight. Christopher Cook has worn out all of the front tires on this car, stomping on the brakes so hard. Has struggled to get around and complete this pass on the 17.
Starting to see Chris Cook is trying the same thing over and over and over again, and on one hand it might work eventually, but on the other hand that is kind of the definition of insanity, is trying the same thing and expecting a different result, and unfortunately it looks like it's really not benefiting him. It's also kind of taught him, taught his competition, Paxa, exactly where he's going to go. So unless he's got a plan to switch it up here in the next couple of laps, looks like the 17 car of Paxa's kind of got the 66 of Cook covered at this point.
And let's be honest, that car is not hard to see either. So he's not sneaking into any braking zones. It's definitely obvious when it happens. There's Mike Brownrigg, spun again in the final corner. Now, was this contact? Nope, this is all on his own. Let's go back and see how it formulated. Or was there contact? Oh, man, these cars keep running into each other, man.
They can't get away from each other, and there was contact. In fact, both of them lost almost the exact same amount of time. Unfortunately, the Porsche is going to end up in the wall here on the inside. The BMW is able to put the clutch in, dump it, and keep rolling, and whether it's fair or not, picks up the spot too.
Yeah, looking at that, the Porsche ran almost like he was about to go off the racetrack, and then sort of turned in real tight. Yeah. The overtake racing car had the nose in there. I'm not really sure how you'd rule that there, Tom.
It's hard. It's the second time we've seen that Porsche run a little bit wide and check up towards the exit of the corner too. So perhaps it's fair now that the BMW has the opportunity to maybe run away just a little bit, but is still sitting there in 21st as we cut back up to 5th and 6th. Watch every single lap here. Cook has shown the nose up the inside, but Paxa is probably expecting it at this point.
Cook has decided not to go that time through. Here's Grid Engineering car, Nick McMillan, having a look up the inside of Mark Harris, who locks up on entry, so maybe just a sign of weakness, and actually he's going to, I don't know if he lifted or just didn't get the power down well, but McMillan goes around the outside.
The Corvette with a little bit of lockup on the way into that corner. I think as soon as he saw any sort of attack from McMillan, he had a bit of a moment on the brakes, ran a bit wide, and McMillan was confidently able to take that spot back. So now the 20 car from Grid Engineering is able to look forward to his sort of, I guess, cousin team, maybe not a sister team, but the Apex V2R 880, and maybe start to run that car back down for 7th.
Well, here is the Just Here for SR car down with an hour and 32 minutes remaining. This is an early pit stop. I'm not exactly sure why Andrew Potter's coming on down, but he is. Maybe splitting this into a 2-stopper here, Tom, but you can't switch drivers just yet.
Now that'd be an odd choice. Drive straight through. That might be a penalty being served at some point for perhaps a cut or something else. I don't know if they have live admins giving penalties right now or not, but looked like he just drove straight through, back on the track.
No, it didn't take any service, just a pass-through penalty. Logan Paxa and Christopher Cook. This has been the longest of the battles so far. I don't think this one's gone away. We were 15 laps into this race, and I think they've been fighting about 14 of those 15 laps. I think Cook is a little faster, but he's just too ragged to actually launch a very specific fight, because every time he gets close, he roasts the tires and has to back off and try again.
Yeah, I agree. I think the 66 car is the faster of the two. We're riding on board looking, and now maybe Paxa showing signs of feeling a bit of that pressure, weaves to the inside, covers just in case he needed to stay down there, realizes he doesn't have enough of a draft, Cook, to make a move up the inside. But I think once Cook has stopped focusing on making the pass so much and just focusing on hitting his marks, look at him, all of a sudden he's got a run in a place he didn't have it before. So the 66 may be figuring out that what he was trying before was futile, but perhaps something else was going to work, as he really had to look up the inside. Now tries the outside. That's not going to work in turn 3. Goes for the over-under, gets a little bit loose from the rear end and doesn't get the power quite down, but he learned something there.
He definitely learned something, and I think he didn't choose the dive up the inside for turn 3, and I like that move, but to be persistent and hang tough around the outside of the left-hander, you really have to be farther alongside. So he might take what he just learned there and apply that next lap if he's close enough to try it again. But you're right, Tom. Didn't try the turn 1 move. He tried it in turn 2, and that time it turned out a little bit better, a little closer to having a pass.
This is the other battle that has not gone anywhere, Bin and Sanders. Sanders is the one that has not really tried to make a move here. Ooh, Bin really hops the curb. We saw that give McMillan a cut penalty in the early stages of this race. But I think Sanders may be letting Bin just kind of run his race, get comfortable, perhaps save some fuel, and then just wait for that perfect opportunity to charge through the 8 car. Seems to be a little bit more composed, I would say, at this stage of the race, 30 minutes in.
Out up front, Grid Life RWB with Austin Cobb. This is a lonely day for Cobb so far. There's nobody even in the camera shot. He's 9.2 seconds out front and continues to stretch that gap out. It's last time by was a 7/10 gain for Austin Cobb.
Wow, that's just so impressive considering, like you said, that the quality of this field. I mean, we have professional race car drivers in this field, and Austin Cobb is driving away. The thing that I did think of, Adam Crane swapped in to start this race for Daniel Morad, who is his teammate in this number 13 car. Morad was the driver that qualified and was able to put a lap within about a half a second of Austin Cobb there in qualifying, although it took him most of the session. Ooh, Christopher Cook, I'll hold that thought as we have a challenge for fifth.
This is all he needs here, Tom, is to stay farther along. If he can hold this, he could have this spot down to the right-hander here. Going to be a drag race up to the left, but Christopher Cook might be through. He's going to disappear off the timing and scoring screen for a moment now. Pops right back in, completes the pass. Ghostbuster style, he's through.
Well, how cool is that? We saw him learn something in real time last lap, and this lap apply it. He took the spot in turns 2 and 3, went around the outside, confidently took the spot in turn 4, and was able to now move ahead up into the top 5 for the 66 car. That was really cool and really, really good work from Christopher Cook, who's now a little bit deep down into turn number 8, squares the corner off nicely, and will get a run up to the Schumacher S's.
He also waited just until you were explaining something with the second place VRS Satellite Racing blue car to do that pass.
He did something exciting in the middle of my thought. How dare he? But getting back to the Adam Crane Daniel Morad car, we saw Morad qualify, Crane get in for the start. Perhaps Daniel Morad is the faster of the 2 drivers and will finish this race off. And as we already speculated, maybe Austin Cobb is the stronger of the 2 for the Grid Life RWB team, as Alessandrini, certainly you don't often bet against him or anything like that, but he has admitted he has less practice this week than often he does. So yeah, I don't know, that 10 seconds is going to be hard to overcome, but I think the faster driver is still yet to get in that 13.
I don't think this battle's over yet. Cook, Paxa, now Ebbett Savage is at the back of that fight in the 880 car. He's come into it. Now it's a 3-horse race for 5th place.
And now we get to find out, our speculation, is the 66 the faster of these 3 cars? He's starting to pull away just a little bit, but now Paxa has the draft. So we get to see this, the tables turned a little bit. Cook rolls the speed up into turn number 1. It looks really good. So I think that 66 car is now able to breathe and enjoy some clear track. But all that bickering did bring that 880 back into the play, you're right.
And Emmett Savage, in pretty decent lap times, was actually 2 seconds faster than Logan Paxa last time by, just because they were battling and he was not. So he reeled him in, but I'm not sure that he's got the outright pace to stay with him once they single file back out. Reminder that we'll be heading to Watkins Glen International back in the United States for our 4th round of this series. Our 5th round is still up for vote, so head to the Race Sim Canada Facebook page to vote. Of course, the options are Spa, Mosport, Coda, Hockenheim, and Daytona. So make sure you check that out. And meanwhile, just got an update that the Just Here for SR team with Andrew Potter, there was a penalty for causing multiple incidents, that drive-through that we saw.
Gotcha. So it was a race steward assessing penalties here in real time. So that's kind of, when you see that pop up on the top of your screen when you're playing the sim, they're keeping an eye out. I got to keep my P's and Q's just in line here. So all the other drivers got a little bit of a warning just by seeing that penalty pop up, I think.
I think so, and you haven't been in that situation, have you, on the racetrack where you got in trouble for something?
No, I'm a perfect angel. I never do anything wrong.
Perfect angel, Tom.
Yeah. No, actually, I've had a lot of good experiences with race stewards. When I do something that they don't appreciate, I like to pick their brains. I like to understand how they think, and I like to race to the rules that the series is enforcing. So I think there's a lot to be gained by the experience of being penalized, and understanding that you're wrong, but understanding why you're wrong, and then racing accordingly.
Yeah. I just have to laugh. How many drivers go in there and feel that they're not wrong and will fight to the death?
Most of us. I mean, we are race car drivers.
Absolutely. Christopher Cook, we thought he was faster, and based on the lap time last time by, he was, but it was only by a couple hundredths of a second. He's still got Logan Paxa right behind him here. Do you think this distraction is holding him back from driving away?
It might be, and Paxa is not necessarily pressuring for position, showing the nose for position, but he is certainly pressuring and keeping the car right there. He's turned the headlights on too. I don't know that he had those on before, but this car is certainly not letting Christopher Cook get away. And Cook, although it does look very clean, he's not really responding to the pressure much. He hasn't been able to get away.
Closest battle on the racetrack at the moment. The lead with Austin Cobb is now over 10 seconds. And second place, or make that third place rather, the battle between Caden Bin and Gavin Sanders. I am getting the feeling that Sanders is pretty content here and doesn't really feel the need to go anywhere. I think they know that those front two are pretty much gone. So is it just a battle for podium now?
Yeah, this is either the most intense race of their life where they cannot get closer to each other than they are now, or they are just pretty content where they are, and we won't know until we interview one of them at the end of the race, I think. But Gavin Sanders, again, is probably gaining himself a bit of an advantage with the ability to save a little bit of fuel, the ability to just kind of have that reference point, that buffer, keeping him from making mistakes. That's also, there's a lot to be said for having just a car in front of you to help you nail your marks.
On board there with the VRS Satellite Racing red car, 17. Quick hands through that chicane. Excuse me. Yeah, quick hands through the chicane there. I need a glass of water or something. For Logan Paxa. That chicane in another form, Tom, is fairly tight and can be a passing zone. In its faster form, though, it's not. It's pretty much fling and sling through there.
Yeah, that passing zone does not exist anymore with the faster of the two chicanes. But what it does is migrate the passing zone one corner later into that final corner. And it's one of two ways. You can either get a run on somebody if they make a mistake in front of you. Coming through that chicane, you can dive up the inside, or if you hang back just a little bit, you might be able to get a better run out of the final corner. So I think it sets up a different passing opportunity, but I don't think it removes a passing opportunity.
So Ben and Gavin Sanders, both driving for Apex V2R. Growing the gap to the drivers behind that Cook and Logan Paxa battle that was so intense. And maybe saving fuel just to make it a one-stop race. I mean, that's the strategy that we saw sort of prevail at Sebring, is the one-stopper versus the two. Maybe that's the strategy here, Tom, is just be patient, save some fuel, and then make it a one-stopper.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to the race that I did at this track and whether or not we were able to go a full hour at pretty much flat-out race pace, and my gut says it was very close. So I know that a lot of these top guys will have done the math on that, and this might be a track where there's just enough off-throttle, just enough braking that you can properly go an hour or more at pretty good race pace. But I guess we'll know within the next couple of minutes whether or not Austin Cobb, having run certainly not any sort of conservation going on there in the 18, and I think 13 is probably in the same boat. If they pit in the next 15 minutes, I would say, then they're on a two-stopper.
Yeah, and again, our window for actually changing drivers will open up soon enough within the next 12 minutes or so, and then you can come on down, get your service, and you don't have to pit again or you don't have to switch drivers again for the rest of the day. But if you pit with more than an hour to go, you're definitely have to make a two-stop strategy. It's basically a one-stopper plus a splash of fuel at the second stop, or it's you save on both runs and you make one stop right at the 1 hour mark, which I think is what has been successful in the past, but it requires a lot of forethought, and you sort of have to give up battles now to be in one later.
And won't that be cool to watch the strategy unfold? I mean, we've paid a lot of attention to the top 10 here, but from maybe even 10th with the Apex V2R 881 on down, other than some quick battles here and there, we haven't talked much about them, but perhaps maybe that's according to plan. Maybe they're saving some fuel down there. Maybe they're setting themselves up for a one-stopper. And if you eliminate a trip down pit lane, which pit lane here is long and it is slow, that's going to be 40+ seconds just to drive through. You might find yourself in a really good spot by eliminating a stop on this race.
Let's battle back here between the not-so-serious Cookie Jar team and the NASCAR not-so-serious team with Ronnie Wimberly behind the wheel. Two of these Corvettes running 18th and 19th at the moment. And just sort of running their own race pace right now, not paying any mind to what's happening at the very front of the field. Probably just saving up potentially to make it on a one-stopper, and this is sort of looking at this like a Formula One race, is advancing yourself in the midfield might be better than just trying to go for glory every single race.
It could feel like a win, definitely, even just to get into the top 10. But these drivers, looks like a bit racy from the orange, the NASCAR not-so-serious team on the back of the Cookie Jar team. These guys probably know each other and are having a good time. But I think the orange, the NASCAR team might be a little bit quicker here. Yeah,
it looks a little faster. Last time by was 9/10 of a second quicker. Nope, I just correct that. 1.1 seconds quicker last time by. So closing in, and they did start pretty deep in the field. They started dead last, and they made up 3 spots with ambitions for a 4th. They can get by the green and black Cookie Jar team with Jason Roy behind the wheel. Shifting back forward. The 3rd and 4th place cars continue to run nose to tail. MC Motorsports with Christopher Cook, Logan Paxa. Emmett Savage has begun to run down the VRS Satellite Racing red car, and Savage has been too quiet lately, I think. I think he's about due to pass somebody.
Yeah, I think he's really in the rhythm, and to put a button on the cars just in front, we speculated Christopher Cook was the faster of them. It took him a couple laps to show it, but he is starting to show signs of running away from the 17 of Paxa. So the VRS Satellite red car just in front of the car we ride on board with is starting to fall into the clutches of Emmett Savage for 6th and 7th. All 3 Porsches there, but look at the gap Cook has pulled, especially in the second half of this lap.
And just behind them, 2.5 seconds back, is Nick McMillan. Think about how costly that cut penalty was. Dropped him down 2 or 3 spots, and he has just not been able to recover, and that's got to be frustrating, especially when you see the battle forming up here and you're not able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's interesting too that he's not really started to catch back up to this this kind of group of cars. I think he was showing signs of really being among the faster cars on the track, and you got to wonder, maybe did he get that cut penalty and they pull an audible on the strategy, just start saving fuel, maybe settle into a different pace than he thought he could run. But either that or the cars in front of him have all of a sudden stepped up their pace, and we now have they're going to touch.
Wow, that was big door slam there between Savage and McMillan. Or Savage and Paxa, excuse me, as they ran into each other down the front straightaway. Oh, a bit of a block there. Cheeky block by Logan Paxa. Maybe didn't appreciate the fender rubbing. And they're going to contact again at the exit of turn 1. Elbows out here at the Nürburgring.
Massive elbows out. We have an hour and 20 minutes left to go in this endurance race, and all of a sudden, Emmett Savage has turned the wick up big time, lunges up the inside for turn 3 for a moment, but he's really putting the pressure on the number 17 of Paxa.
I'm afraid to go back and look at this again because I don't want to miss anything that just happened. But see Emmett Savage get to the inside, and then the 17 car comes off the curb, and then that's when they have their little rub there, Tom. I don't think I see anything. I mean, maybe I think there probably should have been a bit more room given there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Savage could have moved over just a little bit further, and then actually Paxa did a great move. This is a cool trick at this track. You can move over and kind of pinch the driver into the grass. You don't notice that the grass is going to pop up there, and all of a sudden they realize they're going to hit the grass, and it often scares drivers out of making that lunge. It didn't work on Savage, but he kept the pressure on anyway.
That was a pretty wild moment there, about 43 minutes into the race. Man, we still got a long way to go, and I don't think those two are going to be friends from here on out, which is going to be fun to watch, I think, because they're going to be running nose to tail for a while longer. And all that let Christopher Cook drive away, 2 seconds away, and out of drafting range. So Cook in the top 5 solidly now as we approach the pit window opening here in about 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, Christopher Cook gained 2 seconds advantage up ahead, but also behind. I have to imagine Nick McMillan picked up a similar margin in the number 20 car. There he is. He's I don't know that he's visibly closer, but he's just far enough away that it's going to be hard to tell. But I have to imagine he picked up about 2 seconds in that whole thing as well.
Yeah, about 1.5, judging by what I saw just prior to that. So he did gain a little bit of time, and continues to gain some time as those two get back together. But with that rub and that bit of a cheeky block, how much of that lingers in your mind, you know, the lap or two after, or do you think that's off the table and it's been dealt with now, or is that still in Emmett Savage's and Logan Pax's head?
It totally depends on your approach and your mental state at the time. If you're already seeing red mist and something like that happens, it's really hard to shake. But if you're calm, cool, collected and something like that happens, it's pretty easy for you to take the deep breath and go, all right, I see you, I know what you're going to do, and just kind of respond to that and have it in your Rolodex of what the driver behind or in front might try to do. So it really depends on what's going on inside the helmet as Emmett Savage gets another run, and now he will have the preferred line down into the hairpin at the bottom of the track.
Yeah, I think he's going to have this pass complete, and Pax is going to have to give it up. He's going to get a much better run on corner exit here, though, but not good enough to respond on this part of the straightaway. Maybe after the Schumacher S, he'll have a lunge. I think Savage has the quicker car. He might be able to run away. He better.
he better for sure, and we've said that twice now about Paxa. Really seems to be struggling there in the 17. I think, remember, that car started up in 3rd position and has now fallen to 7th. Perhaps they didn't focus enough on their race pace, their race setup, and Logan Paxton might be struggling with that car just a little bit. Either that, or the drivers around him have really stepped it up in the race.
Yeah, both he and Emmett Savage have lap times that are about 1.5 seconds off of what they ran at the beginning of the race. So it does appear like Paxa is losing ground relative to the start of the race, but also the same has happened for Savage, just to a slightly lesser degree. So I think maybe they plan for a little bit more longevity. And it all comes down to camber settings and how aggressive you are with the suspension tuning on these cars, Tom, because if you set the car up wrong, you'd be wearing out the tires prematurely.
Yeah, it's definitely camber alignment. All that stuff matters a lot. You can wear the tire pretty significantly to get that setup wrong. But speaking of the gap varying, the gap at the front has not changed much in the last 10 minutes or so. It's been kind of stagnated there in the 11-second range between Cobb and Crane. So while this is maybe the most entertaining battle on the track, those drivers are both staring at the relative screens, and perhaps Crane is feeling a bit of encouragement by, oh, Cobb's not driving away from me anymore. I've stabilized this thing, and I have some good pace in my Corvette. And
maybe the strongest driver yet to come for the team as well, and we have no idea. It's a black box over there at Grid Life RWB where Alessandrini is going to come out. I don't think it's a question of if Alessandrini is going to be fast. He will. It's just, is he going to be faster than Daniel Morad? That's the bigger question.
Yeah, or is he going to be fast enough within Daniel Morad's pace to maintain that 12 or even 11.99 seconds? Because you only have to win by a little bit if you want to win. I think, you know, what we know of DJ is that we can bet on good confidence he won't lose much. Ooh, just behind Max that runs a little bit wide and is now, I would say McMillan is there. But that's something that we get to at least lean forward in our chairs and speculate about there at the front.
Well, here comes the NASCAR NSS team, Ronnie Wimberly on pit lane, and I think this is a little early. Does it open at 1 hour 15 remaining or 1 hour 10? I don't think you can do a driver swap just yet.
I don't think you can do a driver swap, but there's a lot of damage on the right front of that car. If you get an angle that you can see it, perhaps this is actually a service for a crash.
Yeah, let's go back and see if we can find where that happened. It must have happened earlier in the lap. Yeah, where would this have happened is the question. This happened an entire lap ago. Yeah, this must have happened coming into the final corner after the pit exit, or pit entrance rather. That in front of them is the NSS Cookie Jar team with the other Corvette. Was there a touch potentially between these two?
Maybe. The damage is on the right front, so whatever. About to see something happen. Maybe loses the rear end, ends up in the pit wall. No, it doesn't even happen here. There's a big mystery there, but there it is. Loses it.
Oh,
oof.
It's a big hit too.
And unfortunately, just past the pit entry, so he's going to have to do a whole lap with the damage, and now it's finally on the pit lane.
Yeah, he's been there for a while now, and this is a frustrating moment. That's going to do a lot of damage to the suspension. They're going to be there for a while. Back up to third place. Caden Bin and Gavin Sanders continue to work together here, planning on that one stopper. So we shouldn't expect to see them until about an hour and a minute left at the max. And probably right around the 1 hour mark is when they're going to hit that pit lane. And they're in a great spot to be doing this. They have no pressure from behind. They don't really have any pressure out front. Those other two are just in a league of their own. So I think they're in a great spot just to make it to the end of this race. The question is, for a guy like Austin Cobb, he's been setting the pace, but I don't think he's run a single lap over a minute 52. He's been crushing it. The question is, can he save fuel while doing that?
Yeah, I think we're going to find out really quickly whether he pits in the next minute and a half or whether he pits in the next 10 and a half minutes. You know, it's going to be very apparent when he pits whether they can make it to the end or not. And I think he will either run the car out of gas or, run the car out of gas and throw Alessandrini in as early as possible, or will pit the moment they know they can make it to the end.
Oh, here's an interesting move here. SPI Racing by Caden Bin through turn number 1. This looked like a planned swap, or maybe not. Caden Bin throttles back up, tucks in behind, so positional change there. Maybe a planned swap by this stretch, and maybe to save some fuel for the 883.
Car, is there a mistake up front? Maybe some lap traffic. There's some lingering smoke, but I agree that all of a sudden SPI Racing with Gavin Sanders has made the move. He's been content for 50 minutes to just sit there in fourth, and has now gone by, whether it's because he's capitalizing on a mistake from the 883 team or whether it's just because he got a good run, or whatever it may be. We have a new third place car.
And for 6th place, Emmett Savage feeling pressure again from Logan Paxa. Remember, we saw him make that mistake a little while ago and pushed wide and gave up some time. Now he's got Nick McMillan behind him, so the pressure mounts to get back by Emmett Savage, and was within 0.2 of a second, but unable to complete the pass.
And that's tough for the VRS Satellite Red driver. He's got to pay attention to his windshield and his rearview mirror. Everybody else gets one attention span. He's got to have two, or double, I should say. And looks like McMillan is not quite there yet. He's still got a little bit of distance to go, but he also won't be dealing with the aero wash nearly as much. So I expect to see that 20 car from Grid Engineering really pull up into this battle a bit. But Paxa, a great response. He had started to slip away from the back of the Apex V2R car and has now put himself back in contention.
So pit window should be open now for drivers that would like to come on down and switch to their team, their other teammate, and put some fresh blood in the seat. Now the question becomes, if you're on a two-stop strategy, how late into this do you wait, or do you just pit right now? What's the best goal? I mean, it probably depends on who's in the car now.
I mean, the first question for me is always whether you're in clear track or not. So if you're Nick McMillan, or if you're one of these other cars that is kind of stuck at the back of a train and will maybe only stand to lose time, I'd pit right away. Otherwise, if you're in clear track, Austin Cobb, Adam Crane, Gavin Sanders, any of those cars, if you've got fuel left, run it out, because the cars are fastest right before they run out of fuel. They're very, very light. The tire wear isn't too bad, so you can still turn really fast laps, and that's going to be pretty important to maximize in the strongest window for the car.
It's Mark Harris in the number 12. That's that Chevrolet C8R running back in 10th. Chris Jackson, the Never Quit Racing car. He's going to turn the car over to his teammate, Tony Kloosterman, here in a couple minutes. Adam Pohl, the Event Matrix BMW, Night Blind Racing. RSC's C team with Matt Jensen. And the 613 Racing Alpha team, Antoine Decache, whose teammate in the Bravo car, Mike Brownrigg, has had some trouble today and is a lap down. Has not yet made a pit stop yet either.
And most of those drivers you just mentioned are cars I'm very interested to see where they end up on the pit strategy, because if we do have a situation where a majority of the top 10 is banking on a two-stopper, and those cars, which we for the most part haven't mentioned since the green flag, maybe they're on a one-stopper and maybe all of a sudden they end up towards the front. And that's going to be really, really fun to watch and find out.
Yeah, just because they're having a quiet day on the broadcast doesn't mean they're not going to end up inside the top 10 or even farther up the order.
Yeah.
Just tend to find the action where active passing is happening, but strategy outwardly doesn't look very interesting, Tom, but it makes things real interesting at the end of the race, and I'm excited to see how things pan out. Behind Savage, Pax, and McMillan, though, these three continue to be the closest battle on the racetrack. And no takers on pit lane yet, other than the NASCAR NSS team car that is still in pit lane, and they might be out, judging by how long they've been in there.
Looks like the damage on the right front has improved since they pit in. At least that will be modeled. No, maybe not. There's a good look at the right front. That car's still getting service for severe mechanical damage, but this battle for 6th, 7th, 8th is pretty stagnant. Interesting to see the 881 of Veneer in 9th and Harris in 10th. They come together at some point, meeting there all of a sudden in a battle, and I didn't really notice that.
Yeah, 7/10 between them. Had a look. Remember, the Harris Fellows Racing car will be turned over in to the son of Ron Fellows, so another Canadian racing legend. As we continue to watch this battle for 6th place. And consistency has not been the problems for these guys today. They've been hitting their marks. So I think I've only counted a handful of slip-ups and off-tracks by these drivers. And it's been remarkably clean, other than the crash that we saw with Ronnie Wimberly and the slight coming togethers that Mike Brownrigg had with another car, one of the BMWs back there. They have had it's been a pretty clean racing day today. You think it's going to stay like that to the end? I think, given the talent level here, I think we're likely to see it go pretty green.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. For their sake and for ours, it's much more fun to watch these drivers race cleanly and pick each other off in that way rather than just watch a crash fest. But I'm also watching these guys dynamic right now. We're watching on board the 17 car from VRS Satellite Red at the back of Apex V2R's 880 car. And the driver in the 880 is maximizing corner exits, while the driver of the 17, Logan Paxa, is maximizing entries. And you can see that ebb and flow happen in the slower corners. Really benefiting the 880, but it's keeping the 17 there, just within striking distance. And if all of a sudden that 17 car is good on the brakes and gets a run, I think that 880 is going to have a problem.
We have a taker on pit lane. It is the Overtake Racing car. That's the BMW with Matthew Gilbert. Whoa, there's a car is losing a spot. That was Ferguson by Antoine Decache. Almost had it coming together there. But one of our first takers in the pit window is Matthew Gilbert. He's going to turn the car over to a teammate, most likely. Still remains in the car. And now jumping out, and Diego Zaccarelli is going to jump in, and we'll take that car likely to the end of the race. So we'll keep our eye on who else jumps in. Savage, Paxa, McMillan still grouping up for the 6th place fight. Curious to see of our front runners who's the first one in.
Well, logically, it would be Austin Cobb. If they're all on reasonably similar flat-out runs, Austin Cobb will be the first one in the pit lane as the race leader and will likely be the first car in, but it's still a big mystery to us. It's kind of fun to sit here in the booth having not driven any of these cars and really not know how long will they go on fuel. Not this lap.
He's going to stay out another lap here. VRS Satellite Racing Blue with Adam Crane. Now, this is a driver I would expect them to come in as soon as they can on the fuel number, because as soon as you put Daniel Morad in that car, Adam Crane is no slouch by any stretch, but I think Morad, it might be the quicker of the two. So I don't think you want to delay putting Morad in the car if you can afford it. The question is, I'm not sure that there's a lot of wiggle room in the strategy here for the one-stopper.
No, I think this is a very, very tight on the pit window, but I agree. I mean, there's a reason Daniel Morad qualified the car. If you're faster driver, you want the best qualifying position you can get. So we know from other series, we know from plenty of broadcasts, Adam Crane is plenty fast, and that's why it's interesting to know potentially the better of the two drivers. Oh, this is interesting.
It's Logan Paxa off the racetrack for VRS Satellite Racing Red, and this is over towards the end of the lap, and he is not able to come to hit pit lane. Got on the brakes heading into the chicane, and jumped the curb there, Tom. That's what got him off
massive. Yeah, massive curb pot. Luckily kept it off the wall, but he was running so tight to the back of the Apex V2R car for so many laps. This was almost inevitable, and that's just how easy it is to get your marks wrong. Bounces, lands wrong, and goes for a big ride.
Yeah, and it happens so quickly. And again, you mentioned how you can't really see a lot. Here's the onboard from Logan Paxa. Can't see, turns in, bam.
God, it just happens so fast. It's heartbreaking because that 17 car, again, having qualified third, it slipped back, but was well within the opportunity to still even podium or get a top 5 out of this race, but that's going to be pretty hard to come back from. Yeah, he's only 8th, but he lost a lot of ground.
The NASCAR NSS team has switched drivers. Adam Baffa behind the wheel now, but they have not gone anywhere. Diego Zaccarelli's back out on the racetrack. Curtis James jumping in the just here for SR car. They're the 3rd driver to hit pit lane with about an hour and 2 minutes remaining. Now you're sort of in the zone where I think you could probably make it from here if you were very conservative on your next run. Matt Jensen pulls the RSC C team in the number 16.
I definitely agree that we're within the noise of basically you can pit now and make it on one stop, and you can make it work. I mean, you might have to fuel save just a little bit, but especially depending on where our leaders are on track, which I think they're closing in on the back straight, if not already there. That's pretty safe to pit right now and fuel save until you know you're good.
Timothy Salvatore.
They're actually starting a lap, so they're good.
Yeah, Timothy Salvatore is the one that will jump in the RSCC team car. will remain in pit lane. And here's a battle for 9th. That's Mark Harris attacking Zach Veneer in the 881 car on the brakes. Has him offline defending, and that might bring a weakness here on corner exit. Neither will pit. Now the question becomes, I think you're going to want to pit this lap if you can. You going one more might be too tall of a task. Never Quit Racing hits pit lane. Tony Kluserman awaits to jump in for Chris Jackson. I think we're going to see the majority of the field hit pit lane this time through, but look how much fuel saving everybody did. Everyone made it. With the exception of 3 or 4 cars, everyone got to the halfway mark of this race.
Yeah, and that's pretty in line with what I expected based on my experience with the race. Again, that's just kind of lucky that I have had done this within the last month, but we were able to go just about an hour. I think if Cobb knows he's got another lap, he might look at the track and see that he's clear, but he can definitely pit now, especially in the delta time that it takes to drive through the pits. No pit, so he knows he's got another lap of fuel.
This Ferrari just sips fuel like a Prius as it comes out of the final corner. 1 hour remaining in this race. We are halfway to the checkered in the 2021 Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series presented by Apex V2R. And Cobb has a 15-second lead. I don't know, even if when you throw Daniel Morad in that car without a mistake from DJ Alessandrini, I think that that Grid Life team is looking for their second victory.
Yeah, it's going to take a perfect pit entry, a perfect pit stop, a perfect stint from Daniel Morad, and maybe even a mistake from the Grid Life team for this to be any different than it looks right now. But a number of cars have broken the seal on that pit lane. Miguel Souza jumping in the number 10 car. James Ferfolia is hopping in the LSM Team BMW. These drivers all outside the top 10, of course, but have made it to the midpoint race, but unfortunately any speculation of drivers being able to make it on a one-stop versus 2 by saving some fuel, that's out the window. Everyone's doing a one-stop.
Notice that we saw that the change in position for Gavin Sanders and Caden Bin. Now notice how far off pace the 883 of Caden Bin is. It's a 6-second gap between Sanders and Bin, and I am being told that there are some hardware-related issues with this 883 car. So they would like to, I'm sure, get this car into pit lane as soon as possible so that they can get the driver switched out and get those wheel issues out of the way.
Yeah, and that's certainly a problem, and I'm actually surprised they haven't already pit because we're past halfway. They've passed the pit entrance already, and they would have certainly made at least another halfway for the finish had they pit last lap. So if he's got some hardware issues, the fact that he even stayed out is pretty interesting, but he's lost a ton of time. You're right, 5 seconds since we saw that pass happen, I don't know, 10 minutes ago. Maybe 15 at most is pretty significant.
Yeah, 1:53.8 last time by was 1.7 seconds slower than Gavin Sanders in the number 8 SPI racing car. So definitely hurting. Austin Cobb's still going.
Well, maybe this is a situation where they know they've got the fuel and they know the stronger driver's in the car. Whoa, another mistake. This is for 10th. I think it's F&A.
Yes, it is. The 881 goes off course. And now the mistakes are starting to happen in really hot with pressure from Harris from behind and just runs off course. So mistakes were made, and second place car, Adam Crane for VRS Satellite Racing Blue. He is in. Gavin Sanders will stay out another lap. But this should be Daniel Morad now jumping in for Adam Crane and switching drivers and potentially putting their last bullet in the chamber here.
Yeah, SPI Racing staying out, so this is the first of our front runners really in the pit lane. Looks like another Apex V2R car in the pit lane behind. That might be the 883 car, as now the Grid Engineering Porsche stays out. Now we've got pretty much everybody. The Apex V2R 880 is in, MC Motorsports in the 66 is in. So the number of Porsches and our Corvette are all in. Logan Paxa, having made that mistake, will come in and hand the keys over as well. Daniel Morad on track.
Yeah, he's back out, so now the pressure mounts for Austin Cobb to turn over the keys to DJ Alessandrini. They had a 15-second lead before the pit stop sequence. Now the magic is making it last for the next 56 minutes. But I'm feeling pretty good for them, for their sake, just because of how much of a gap they managed to establish before the pit stop sequence. Even with DJ being off a 10th or 2 a lap, it's going to be a pretty hard hill to overcome, even for a guy like Morad.
Yeah, he's going to need to be seconds now. Grid Life RWB hits the pit lane. That was perfect timing for lap traffic too, as they had just run up on the back markers coming down the back straightaway. Austin Cobb accelerates up to the pit cones, puts on the pit speed limiter, and I mean, tip of the hat, bow down. That was a spectacular opening stint from Austin Cobb for Grid Life RWB.
Yeah, it was really, really solid. He's going to come on down to pit lane. Stop in the box, we'll see what he's got, as Alex Ellis in the 17 car is on pit lane for VRS Satellite Racing Red. They've been down here for a minute and 22 seconds. He's going to pull away. And where is Daniel Morad? And I don't think he's going to gain 5 seconds, but he might gain a little bit. Now as Alessandrini jumps in, and he's gotten his practice now. And because he was practicing, Tom, he's ready to rip. Now a lot of drivers might just be watching their team and doing some sort of strategy calculations and aren't coming straight out of practicing. So DJ is going to be pretty much already warmed up and ripe and ready to go.
Oh, that's what's really interesting. It's interesting and fun about this sim racing is your teammate is also your crew chief and your strategist and your a lot of times your setup helper at least. And this is closing up pretty. That's going to be close. Daniel Morad might be kind of door-to-door with Alessandrini coming out of the pit lane. Maybe they pit early enough that they spent less time on the pit lane. What is going on with Grid Life RWB?
No, their pit stop is perfectly normal. About a minute and 20 seconds is what we expect, minute 25 seconds. But Daniel Morad's stop, their VRS Satellite Racing Blue only stopped for 55 seconds, or I should say for 31 seconds. Did they not change tires?
I bet they didn't. Wow. Very interesting strategy call. What was it, about a 30-second difference?
Yeah, so VRS Satellite Racing Blue stopped for 31. Grid Life RWB was in the box for 1 minute exactly.
Okay, so not only did VRS Satellite Blue potentially not change tires, it looks like there might be a couple of other cars that didn't. Maybe Event Matrix in the BMW. I think we've seen that car in the pit lane.
No, the Event Matrix has not come on down. It's going to cycle out for Morad to be the lead, and Grid Life RWB second with Alessandrini. MC Motorsports, though, they are also on the no-tire strategy. And Grid Engineering, I can't tell. They were on pit lane for 50.5 seconds, which is almost the full minute that the other cars that took tires required. So that might be, maybe they just stage 2? Would that be silly?
It's tough to say. I don't know how that would really work. As the 66 very defensive over the BMW for, I think that is about 6th position. Oh, they're going to get a touch maybe at the apex of the hairpin. Things sorting themselves out on the pit cycles here as drivers get back up to speed. Most of these drivers are completely cold, as you mentioned. Alessandrini may be one of the only drivers that is in the position where he's just been driving rather than watching his teammate and spotting.
Yeah, that's James. Sorry to interrupt you. That's James Ferfolia in the 15 car. That car's a lap down, not from position, but certainly felt like it was for a moment. So looks like Harris Fellows Racing is going to be in with Mark Harris. Justin DiBenedetto jumps in the SPI Racing car. They're back out on track. Also, a no tire call. Nope, they are going to take tires. They got the car up on the jack stands.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see, to confirm whether or not Morad, did that car go up on the jacks at all or not. We were watching that pit stop closely enough to know, but we'll know on raw pace pretty quickly here because these tires did get an update recently where they wear just a little bit harder. Maybe Adam Crane balancing his pace a bit, lost that 15 seconds on purpose, knowing that he could save his teammate Daniel Morad some tires. It is now currently 11 seconds, but Alessandrini is quickly ticking away, or is starting to tick away at least.
Yeah,
gap.
Looking at the times, a 1:53.5 for Morad last lap. It was. I didn't see what the timing was for Alessandrini, but it was a little quicker, I believe, prior to it invalidating. But Morad, now the question is, can he persist his car off track right in front of him? That was a little bit dicey. It was one of the BMWs. Catch which one it was. Was the Night Blind Racing car? I think so.
Yeah, just a little bit went into the hairpin at the bottom of the track. And the race leader coming through, this is always sketchy when you're now all of a sudden having done your pit stop, things are cycling out and you're in the lap traffic. So Morad gets through. He didn't lose much time, but check the gap. It was 11.1 last time I looked up in the upper left. Now it's 10.67. So Alessandrini's fresh tires are going to get him a little bit of a gain. Wouldn't be surprised to see that stagnate just a little bit in the middle of the last hour of this race, maybe up until the last 20 minutes where I put money actually on the 18 car having a massive amount of pace at the end of this race relative to the 13.
Lots of traffic that Danny Moore is having to negotiate too. That borked him there just a little bit. Awkward interaction there at the front straightaway mark. 51 minutes remaining. Tom, this is going to be all down to the strategy call. Are tires worth having here at the Nürburgring? Do you use enough of them? I'm concerned just because of the weather today being so hot that I would think that tires would get pretty torn up, but it is cooling off. It's only 103 now.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I know from the experience of the race that I did, we took tires every stop we could because of the updated tires wearing so significantly. We agreed that it was not worth the raw pace to save the pit stop time, so I don't know. They had a 15-second buffer on the way in. They only had 10 seconds to make up on the way out, so if Alessandrini can run anything like Cobb's pace, he will easily run down and then put a couple more seconds on Daniel Morad, but that's only on paper. He's got to put it into practice.
Looking at times so far, the best lap time that this car has run today is a 1:51.321. Alessandrini's last lap was a 52.4, so still has a little ways to go to get down to Austin Cobb's pace, but he still is eating into the lead of Daniel Morad. That last time by was 1.3 second gain, puts him 9.6 back. And it's only going to increase as the tires start to wear out aggressively for Morad beyond a certain point. Here's Scott McGuire jumping in the 66. Now, Justin DiBenedetto is in the 8 car for SPI Racing, and the MC Motorsports car gained a bunch. They were also on the no tire call, and you can see them losing a spot to DiBenedetto, who is on 4 fresh tires.
Yeah, so the white and black Porsche that just picked up 3rd position, but DiBenedetto, that car did pick up tires, but was also running 3rd place way up the road from the 66 of Scott McGuire when they did the pit stop. McGuire in the yellow Porsche did not take tires, but now has a 13-second buffer back to Sagan in the 883. So the Apex V2R car, there's to look at it through the Schumacher S's. That car, it did take tires, I believe, on the pit stop and has quite a ways to go before catching that 66. So that might be a pretty good strategy call for the MC Motorsports car.
Here's the Grid Engineering Christopher Roberts machine. Again, a weird pit stop length, 50 seconds. Again, car, whoa, and that was that. Yes, it was the 883. He went wide and lost the spot. Just happened out of frame there. Might have just touched a little, yeah, running a little bit wide up onto the gravel there, Tom.
Yeah, it's so easy to do there. You want to get on throttle. You have a little bit of camber to help you, but it's really, it's a slower corner than you want it to be. Leading onto that back straightaway is the way I'll say it. And it's pretty easy to drop a tire, and Sagan runs just a little bit wide. Now the position for the Grid Engineering, number 20, up into the top 5, but can either of these cars, maybe even both of them, catch the no tire change MC Motorsports car running 4th?
You'll see it's a little ways up the road, 13.2 seconds. 8.5 is the difference between Morad and Alessandrini, and this is just a race against time. But my fear for Morad is that Alessandrini knows exactly what the scenario is here, and this is where he calls this effectively lizard brain, where he's just going to get into this groove and just be an absolute weapon for the next 48 minutes. And giving him a goal to chase is often more dangerous than just turning him loose. Picking up time as well, a 51.9. That's his personal best of the day.
Yeah, he'll get about maybe 3 laps worth of really close to raw speed here at the beginning of the stint. Then the tires will fall off just a little bit. He'll probably run a majority of the stint in those high 51s or even into the 52s as Austin Cobb did. The question is just how fast can Daniel Morad go on those tires that are worn. Probably at least 75 to 70% of those tires are burned off, are left, I should say. About 25% of the tires, maybe even 30% of the tires burned down.
Timothy Salvatore and Douglas Doucette, 13th and 14th. They had a side-by-side moment through the chicane that they eventually got sorted out. Salvatore up to 13th, Doucette down to 14th place. All happening right in front of Alessandrini in second, just behind. So the field has begun to spread out just a little bit just because of the way the pit stop sequence is ended here, Tom. So now we got about a 45-minute sprint to the end. 7.7 between the race leader and Alessandrini. Now the gap is tumbling pretty quickly now, but do you think it's going to be sustained like that? Will it get easier or harder for DJ to make up that time by the end?
I think it's going to get easier, to be honest. I don't like the odds for the VRS Satellite Blue Corvette right now, just because the simple fact that it's been less than 10 minutes since they left the pit lane, maybe 10 minutes on the nose, and already 3 of those 10 seconds are gone. that is not good odds for the amount of time left in this race. So if I was a betting man, I often am not, but that's where I would put my money for sure. But there's a lot more factors than that in racing.
We'll see if Daniel Morad can hang on, about conserving tires and conserving the time that he has, 7.3 seconds, 46 minutes to go. Back to Salvatore and Douglas Doucette. They are the other closest battle on the track, but I think Salvatore's a little quicker right now. Wow, yes, he is 3 seconds faster than Doucette last time by for Night Blind Racing. So 0-2 needed to get back up on the horse to find the pace again. Checking in on the manufacturers here, Tom. We've had Event Matrix climb up the order a little bit with Peter Neely behind the wheel, the highest running BMW, and the only other Ferrari in the field, Average J Racing, up to 15th.
I think that mostly may come down to attrition just a bit, but for the most part, we have that gaggle of Porsches in the top 10 with Harris Fellows Racing, BRS Satellite Blue, both maintaining top 10s in their Corvettes, and then of course Grid Life RWB and the Ferrari, who they have said this is certainly a good track for that Ferrari. So James Liebrecht here in this Average J Racing may be pretty happy with the way the car is driving there to work themselves up to the top 15.
Sam Fellows in the number 12, again Ron Fellows' son in the number 12, up to 9th. This is the other highest running Corvette C8R, the other one being driven by Daniel Morad, who's leading this race. Tony Klusterman in the Never Quit Racing car into 10th. They've had a really good run in the first couple rounds of the season, and so far it is shaping up to be another consistent climb throughout the day. And after starting the day back in 9th, they did have dropped one spot, but generally they move forward slowly over the course of the race, and I don't think a top 10 is anything to hang your head over by the end of this race.
No, and this is one of the cars that I was definitely excited to see if they were going to be some one-stoppers and two-stoppers. I think this was probably my leading car for, we haven't seen as much of them as we normally would, as I look down the list. So unfortunately that didn't pan out, but this car still has the opportunity to find its way further up the top 10, as you saw the Corvette from Harris Fellows Racing just in front, a little bit up the road, but I think the opportunities may still be there for Tony Klusterman.
I had to laugh. I was looking through the communications between the drivers and the staff. Alessandrini asked if there was an incident limit here today. The answer was promptly given, no. So you know what that means is that we were talking earlier about stewards and decision making. Well, crashes are one thing, using track limits is another, and Alessandrini going to take every bit of racetrack that he can in order to run down that lead car.
Yeah, and there's a couple of places that benefits you massively here on the Nürburgring GP circuit, one of them being turn 3 at the inside of the circuit, one of them being exiting turn 4, running wide on the exit of the circuit, and the last one, in my mind, being running wide in the final chicane in turns 14, 15 at the end of the track, at the end of the lap. You can maximize all 3 of those every single lap and gain, we're talking up to a half a second, so that's going to be a big data point for Alessandrini to know. There's not a lot of consequences for all these incidents. I'm going to just rack them up.
Yeah, see, he's not really taking advantage of the one on the inside of the corner here, but I bet you he will take the advantage of the one on exit. No, he's actually really not running that wide.
No, that's pretty clean.
Yeah, no sort of Formula One situation where you find out later that track limits matter. He found out real briefly that they don't, so that he can extend them. But he's not using them now, and maybe doesn't want to be seen as abusing them, but towards the end of the race, if he needs to run a little bit wide, he knows that he can. MC Motorsports gives up a spot to the Grid Engineering car. That's McGuire heating to Roberts.
Well, that was that 13-second gap we talked about maybe 10 minutes ago. That did not take very long to evaporate, so I have to imagine the 66 car for Scott McGuire is not very happy. Look at that, 56.7 last time through to a best lap of a 52. These last 40 minutes for Scott McGuire, unfortunately, are shaping up. They're looking like they're going to be pretty miserable.
And this is a weird one for me because they gained a couple spots for the very short term, but they were fast on pace before that. This is there was something to gain for Morad and Crane to try the differing strategy because they weren't going to win otherwise. But for MC Motorsports, Tom, this is a peculiar one to me because they were running fine before and had the pace to continue improving, but now they've sort of made their bed. They have to lay in it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a little bit of an odd call, but perhaps anything out of the top 5 is not that interesting to them. So they thought maybe we run, that kind of out of the box strategy. They came out of the pits in 3rd. It's probably looking pretty good for a short period of time, and then they realizing maybe the bid they made is not as comfortable as they thought it might be.
Well, that's the thing is they were 5th coming into the box. Now Matt Corrins is right behind. They're definitely going to finish at least 7th or worse at this point. So this, in my mind, the strategy has already failed them, but we'll see how it pans out at the very end of the day. 6 seconds flat between Daniel Morad and Alessandrini. And the more this goes on, the more I'm sort of beginning to realize that there's not much of a chance for Morad unless he gets real creative here in the next 41 minutes.
Well, you say that, but it took a lot longer for Alessandrini to go from 7 to 6 seconds than it did to go from 10 to 7, if you know what I'm saying. So I think all of a sudden Alessandrini, maybe the polish of the tire has fallen off just a little bit. He's settling into that race pace. As I mentioned early on, the car gets a little uncomfortable through the middle of its stint until it really gets fast at the end. I do think the 18 will catch the 13. I think Grid Life will catch VRS Satellite Blue, but it's going to take a lot longer than we maybe suspected early on.
Yeah, 40 minutes is a long time, though. I mean, that's a full race anywhere else. See, this is Matt Corrins going by Scott McGuire now, takes that spot away. 7.5 seconds farther back, where you'll find Alex Ellis in the VRS Satellite Racing red car. This is a car would have expected to be a little bit more competitive today. They just sort of dropped backwards from the start of the race, Tom. Never really had the speed to stay up inside the top 5.
Oh, sorry, I have my mute on for a second. That's a big surprise, I think, for me, because these are two drivers that we know are very quick, and obviously they qualified up in the top 3, starting there in 3rd, but I forget which driver qualified, but Alex Ellis is certainly very fast. We've seen him in other series as well. And this car will likely go nowhere but up from this point in the race, but it is a surprise to see it running this far back in the race.
Yeah, 8th place certainly isn't terrible, but it's a little farther back than I would have expected, perhaps, for a team of this caliber. Moving back down the order just a little bit. Miguel Salza in the 613 Alpha team car, running 16th. And just behind them, Daniel Salmon in the NSS Cookie Jar Corvette, running 17th. And he is actually a little bit quicker than Salza in the Porsche up in front, so he might be able to make this pass for P16. Yeah, about a second quicker this time by than the car in front. So keeping an eye on Tony Klusterman, the 121 Never Quit Racing car. They've got Sam Fellows about 2 seconds up the road. I think Klusterman is a touch quicker right now. We'll see if he can reel him in for a 9th place spot.
That would certainly feel very good. I think these guys came from just, did they start 9th? Is that what we determined? Yes. They would kind of get back to where they started after maybe falling back a bit in that first stint. But I do know that Tony Klusterman qualified this car, so that implies that he is the faster of the 2 teammates. Maybe he can get the car back to where he qualified it, or maybe even a little bit further up the road.
Yeah, beyond Sam Fellows, it's about 16 seconds to go get Alex Ellis. That's a tall task, but never say never here. And it took another 3 minutes to reel in another second. Alessandrini beginning to smell the blood in the water, perhaps. Yeah,
there was a moment there where, again, I mentioned it took pretty long time for the gap to go from 7 to 6 seconds. It has not taken very long to get down to about 4.5. So the moment of the glimmer of hope that I tried to give Daniel Morad there, the benefit of the doubt, is going back away in my mind pretty quickly, as Alessandrini is circulating very, very quickly, is going to undoubtedly be under 4 seconds away. And the worst news of all is he can see Daniel Morad now on the track.
Yeah, that was about a second in 3 minutes. So with 4 seconds, that's what, about 12 more minutes, so about 25 minutes to go. That'll be a battle for the top spot. It might even be sooner than that. Here is Scott McGuire and Alex Ellis. Right behind him, I believe that is the 502 car, the NASCAR NSS team car that is 7 laps down with Adam Boffa behind the wheel after their crash damage got repaired. Just making laps at this point, just to try to get experience. Scott
McGuire is letting cars go as they catch him, so he knows he's in a bad spot with pace in that 66. You see Alex Ellis really ragged into the last corner, pushing hard to try to make up as many spots as possible, as he may, it's not without a chance of catching up to maybe even the top 5, as those 2 Apex V2R cars of Sagan and Corrins are up the road, but that's a tall order.
I just heard a tidbit about Alex Ellis' teammate Paxa earlier. Now remember, there's Logan Paxa in it. He had just purchased the car and track 2 hours before the race, so that might lead us to believe why he might have slid backwards rather than go forwards. That changes my tone. I think that was pretty impressive, honestly, to retain what he did. 3.3 between Morad and Alessandrini. This is going to happen a lot sooner than later, I think, at this point.
It's going to happen fast, and that's what the math said. Again, remember we talked about the gap at this pit at the pit window being 15 seconds. When they came back out, it was 10. So that means that assuming Alessandrini can make up that 15 seconds, he would assume the lead, and well before the checkered flag. So it looks like that's going to certainly be the case. You know, passing a car is is a little different than catching a car, but when he's got so much time to do it, and it seems to be such a better car at the time, then I think he'll make pretty quick work of Daniel Morad.
They have had a stranglehold on the field ever since Sebring. And with 36 minutes to go, Alessandrini sitting in the catbird seat, running down Daniel Morad. And another driver that's about to pounce is Tony Kloosterman on Sam Fellows. This is for 9th.
Well, that didn't take long, did it? We were just speculating that was about 2 seconds, I think, last time we checked. Now it's nothing. There's 1 car length between the two of them. Kloosterman tries to set up for a run down the back straight. Look at the Corvette, though, leap off the corner out of 12, headed towards the final chicane. And I have to imagine the first half of this lap might be the strong suit for the Porsche. The second half of the lap a little bit faster and flowing for the Corvette.
Kloosterman closes just a touch on the brakes into the chicane, a little bit wobbly there. Porsches have struggled with a little bit of stability through that fast section there, though, but Kloosterman is now right on the tailpipes of Sam Fellows as they head down the front straightaway here. On the brakes into turn number 1, closes all the way up to the rear brake lights. And so much rotation out of that Porsche on corner exit. Was able to cheat over to the right. Bit of a bobble there now.
Ooh, yeah, both of them big slides coming out of 2 down into turn number 3, but watch the point and shoot for the Porsche off of this little tight sequence. Corvette gets a good run though. Kloosterman loses some time, and maybe Fellows has a bit of a fire under him to keep this spot. He wants the top 10. Ooh, Kloosterman grabs grass on the entry there. That is a really high risk spot. He saves it. Really doesn't lose a lot of time, but you can toss the car off the track doing that.
We've seen that a bunch, and we saw some pretty high attrition rates in other series in the past at tracks like this or anywhere else really. Just on corner entry, especially when you're on the brakes and you load up the right rear tire as you start to turn in, that can easily turn into a spin situation. So good thing that Kloosterman gathered it back up. He continues to try to run down the Sam Fellows machine. 1.8 seconds at the front of the field between Morad and Alessandrini. 34 minutes to go. Dive up the inside. I think Fellows is going to let Kloosterman go, and that he does.
Yeah, that almost looked like an open invitation there between those two, but now for the first time our leaders are within the same camera shot. After the pit stops, Daniel Morad is struggling with pace in the ragged tires. He did not take tires again back at the pit stop, and the Grid Life RWB team with the majority of the field did take those tires. And I think it's really benefiting them. Alessandrini is within 1 second by the end of this lap, I bet. It extends just a little bit through the middle of this lap, but Morad, he looks nice and clean. He's not abusing the car, it just doesn't have the raw pace.
Well, looking at this strategy of taking no tires, it was a tale of 2 turnouts for anybody that didn't take tires. For the VRS Satellite Racing Blue team, this was a good idea because they weren't going to just run down Alessandrini on raw pace. This gave them an opportunity to try to win. I don't think it's going to pan out that way, but at least it gave them a shot. For the MC Motorsports team, again, I don't want to harp on this too much and beat a dead horse, but I don't understand why that decision got made because they were moving forward with the pace that they had, and now they put themselves at a disadvantage and dropped 3 spots from where they were at the time of the pit stop. So probably unwise for the 66 and a good try for the 13 of Morad and team. I don't think it's going to pan out, but worth a try.
No, and I think you're right. There's one team that had nothing to lose and one team that stood quite a bit to lose, and it's kind of panning out that way exactly as you could have predicted. But the 13 for Morad, I think, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, really. You have worse tires, which makes the car handle worse, which means you have to push it harder, which means you wear the tires harder, which means you wear them worse. So you kind of just have to drive it to what it is giving you and accept that if the car behind you is faster, you just kind of let them go. There's a point where you can defend, but they're well within. I mean, we got a half hour left. You've predicted 25 minutes. We're there.
Yep, and with 7 minutes to spare on my prediction, Alessandrini is ready to party to get that lead back. Now, this team has, well, Alessandrini's team Grid Life RWB has led 34 of 46 laps that we've completed today. And the other 12 that they have not led went to this man right here, or almost all of them at least, Daniel Morad, and team for VRS Satellite Racing Blue. But that time is about to come to an end. Alessandrini right to the tailpipes here through the last couple corners, heading up to the chicane here at the Nürburgring GP circuit for the Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series. Battle for the lead, Morad defending from Alessandrini.
And he can be patient right now. Alessandrini does not need to force the issue. He's got so much time and a way better car underneath him. The last thing he needs to do is really do something silly, which this is pretty silly. Side by side into the last chicane, almost a touch on the back of the Corvette. That is just a lot of pressure for a car that you know is struggling, blood in the water for Daniel Morad. But now Alessandrini squares at the exit for the front straightaway and might be able to draft up. Morad is going to protect.
Yeah, he's going to do everything that he could. There was definitely a little bit of a touch going through that chicane, just a scrape. And now Morad chases all the way over to the right to try to defend Alessandrini on the outside heading into turn number 1. Over, under, no tires for Morad. He will not be able to defend. And that just shows you how weak the rubber on that car is, because DJ made that look easy.
Yeah, and I think he was thinking, I'm going to make this last as long as I possibly can, because why not? But there was just nothing happening there between those two cars. Saw Morad was even not super deep on the brakes, still had some lockup and ran just a bit wide. Now all of a sudden, Grid Life RWB finds themselves leading the race 2 rounds in a row.
It was back at Sebring about a month ago where they went out and won the race. And with 30 minutes remaining, we are 3/4 of the way through this event. Grid Life RWB looking to go 2 for 2. Now, they also finished second at Road America. They're also ineligible for the prizing for this series, so they are really making it a frustrating experience to go out there and win and not be eligible for the prizes. But here's a battle for position. This is Night Blind Racing and James Liebrecht and the Average J Racing car for 14th place.
We've already seen how strong the Ferrari can be, and I think this Ferrari has run down the BMW. Lashosa knows that the inside the BMW opens the door. A bit of damage on the right front of that car for the BMW driver of Doucette, but keeps the power down and will now go side by side up the inside for the Schumacher chicane. Finally lifts out of it. The Ferrari takes the spot.
A dicey moment there for sure. Checking back in on the Apex V2R teams, 883 and 880. Marc-Andre and Mac running 5th and 6th. And the 3rd and final one, Pete Fitzsimmons in the 881 down in 10th. I think they'd like to get potentially back by the Grid Engineering car if they could. But right now, Christopher Roberts is running a lot quicker at the moment. And Christopher Roberts did he ever switch drivers?
They did, yes.
Oh, it was McMillan before.
Yes, Roberts qualified, McMillan started, and now the qualifier Roberts is back in the car. And I think it's going to be near impossible for him to catch De Benedetto for a podium, as De Benedetto is also very, very quick in the number 8 car. But he's also pretty safe, I think, from the 2 Apex cars. Whoa, a big awkward spin. What was that?
So this is an interesting one. Scott McGuire had just come down pit lane, and I believe they just put tires on the car. They're fresh out of the pits. And this could be cold tires. I think they realized that they were tumbling down the order too fast, that they had just left the pit road. And I think what you're going to see here is just a cold tire lockup, maybe? Yeah, car just starts to step out and just overcorrects.
Yeah. Well, he's been driving the car with basically terrible tires on it for at least 25 minutes, and now all of a sudden he's got a bunch of grip. He might have expected that slide to be pretty normal, corrected, and all of a sudden snapped the other direction. But that does not bode well for Daniel Morad, who also has tires just as old as the tires that the 66 car just pulled off, the MC Motorsports car. I agree, they were probably thinking, man, this is just way too miserable. We can't live with this anymore. We've got to take some tires and make up for it the best we can. Are we in a situation where SPI Racing and Grid Engineering have an opportunity to catch the VRS Blue team?
May be. I think Morad is probably holding on a little bit better than other drivers in the same strategy, but he still just ran a 1:54.0 last time by, which is almost 2 full seconds off of Alessandrini. So they are definitely going to struggle. Again, it makes sense that this team did this. The 66 now, they've just doubled down on issues today, because now they're 15th. Now, I don't know if there's enough tire overlap, or I don't know if there's drivers in front of them have old enough tires where Scott McGuire can drive back through them. I think he's going to be sort of stuck back here. He might get 2 or 3 spots back, but it's not going to be a top 10 for them today, I don't think.
No, I don't. It's going to be close potentially because he is. I don't know that a tire matters as much as it is. He's in the realm where he's just going to be a faster car. On the same tires, this car was running up in the top 5, and now that he's back in 15th, he might be able to salvage top 12 or top 10. But things are still very, very spread out. Only 22 cars on this track. There's a lot of open lapping happening at this point in the race. The other thing you just saw is the weather has cooled off massively. It's only 100 degrees, only 100, down from 113.
Yeah, down almost 15 degrees from the drop of the green flag. So the track is going to pick up. Track is also rubbering in a little bit. Tom, how does the track rubber change the racing at the grip level, and does that affect tire wear as well?
Well, in my experience, it doesn't change it massively. I think it might make it a little bit more punishing to run a bit wide. But as long as you're kind of running on that line, it will just naturally feel like the car is maintaining its grip, I think. But you do kind of have to be pretty precise. Maybe some Apex V2R team orders happening here. Matt Corrins motors past Marc-Andre Seguin, and Seguin is now following in the 6th position. Maybe does Matt Corrins have the opportunity to run down the Grid Engineering car?
A Grid Engineering car with Christopher Roberts behind the wheel. His last lap time was a 1:52.4 to Matt Corrins' 1:52.1. It's only a 7.3 second gap. I'd say that the chances are decent that he gets there.
Yeah, it's very possible, especially if they get a little bit of luck with some lap traffic, as they are now starting to navigate that lap traffic. Corrins, this is a driver that certainly has the opportunity to capitalize on that kind of situation.
25 minutes to go, and about 15 laps worth of racing remaining. Out front, it's Grid Life RWB with DJ Alessandrini behind the wheel by over 4 seconds, or about to be 4 seconds, over Daniel Morad, who's teamed up with Adam Crane for VRS Satellite Racing Blue. Then it's Justin DiBenedetto in the SPI Racing Porsche in 3rd, followed by the Grid Engineering Christopher Roberts machine, then Matt Corrins in the Apex V2R 880. Everybody that started this race is still running, only minor damage today. No crashes to speak of, other than some minor car-to-car contacts. And Adam Boffa, that team had to come to pit lane a little earlier to fix some right front damage after a collision with the pit wall. But all in all, pretty clean race today, Tom, and not a lot of mistakes, which is meaning or making for a difficult time for anyone to actually make up spots once they make one. Yeah, and it's kind of speaks to the quality of this series. Again, these are drivers that are all well experienced, well vetted, and have the opportunity to race in this series, which is, again, such high quality. And the other thing I just noticed, I think by my math, the 1st place car of Alessandrini and the 3rd place car of DiBenedetto have pretty much been stable on their gaps between each other. So DiBenedetto's car for that Porsche has certainly got a ton of pace in it right now, is slowly catching Daniel Morad. I don't think he'll quite get there. There's a look at the number 8 car, but I think that also just speaks to just how darn fast Austin Cobb went in that opening stint for him to put that gap on that field. I mean, Austin Cobb, truly, that was one of the best stints I've seen in sim racing in a long time. He just went out there and drove away, and that left them enough wiggle room to be able to put tires on the car and still be able to pass. Now, I don't know how much different things would have been if everything was the same, but Austin Cobb only had a 5-second lead. I don't know how that would have changed things, but it seems to me like they set themselves up to really not be able. I don't think they were able to lose this race as long as they didn't do anything silly. Yeah, if Austin had only had a 5-second lead instead of that 15, it would still be about 5 seconds before Alessandrini caught Morad. So you can do the what if game all day long. But I do think if Alessandrini and Morad's teammates both had run the similar or exact same first stint, and they had done their same strategies that they're on now, if Morad had not taken tires, if Alessandrini had taken tires, all of a sudden Morad would find himself closer to 40 seconds in the lead. That would have been a no-brainer on the pit strategy. But it was, again, because Austin Cobb's opening stint was so strong, they could take the tires, they could comfortably run down and pass for the lead once again. Matt Corrins trying to run down the Grid Engineering car, but they're running fairly similar lap times at the moment, and now some lap traffic to deal with. Daniel Salmon in the number 75 right in front of them. And other battles on the racetrack probably shaping up. Keeping my eye on Event Matrix, they're a little bit off pace right now, and even Peter Neely behind the wheel. at least off pace in comparison to the RSCC team with Timothy Salvatore. About 4.5, 5/10 quicker last time by for Timothy Salvatore. So with a 6.9 second gap, I'd expect to see that come down to 0 shortly. Alessandrini across the line, closing in on 10 laps to go, and just setting the pace at this point. About half the field to lap down, all the way back to 10th place Pete Fitzsimmons on the lead lap. I almost said Pete Fitzsimmons. Whoops. Gamo Torman.
Yep. It is, well.
This is going to be a long day for me, Tom. I have a full distance Indy 500 kicking right off after this, so that's going to be a long day for me.
Yeah, I leave where I'm at and drive 6.5 hours to intercept
my wheels.
some wheels for you and to get back to our house. So we both have long nights ahead of us, but luckily we got to watch some fun racing along the way.
Yep.
Root on a bunch of our friends here in the Apex V2R Sim Race Canada series.
I'm excited for my wheels, man. I've been waiting. I've got snow tires on. I just bought a Scion FRS for those that no one else knows, but now they do. And it came on snow tires and steely rims, and they're awful. And I cannot wait to get them off because it goes from looking like a $20,000 car to looking like a $3,000 car with steelies on it. So I want them off.
That is true. That is very true. I'll bring you some very soon.
Thank you.
But the other thing I just noticed is Alex Ellis is running down Marc-Andre Sagan very quickly. Look at that. The Porsches in the frame are all for position. The Corvette is not for position. But Alex Ellis is really, really quick right now.
Yeah, Ellis has been picking it up. And remember, their teammate today was new to the car and the track, and they lost a little bit of ground after starting in third. I believe it was Ellis that qualified the car. But Ellis is running really quick right now, a 151.6. That was faster than Alessandrini by half a second last time by. So this 17 car might grab 2 or 3 spots here and get back inside the top 5 before this race is over.
I was going to say, I think that was scary. I don't have sound, but I even heard that one pucker for a second between for the driver when the car stepped there on the entry curve. But I agree. I think Alex Ellis is the strongest car in 5th, 6th, or 7th. He runs 7th and will almost definitely run down Matt Corrins. I don't know, what's the pace look like on your end for between those two cars?
51.6 for Ellis last time by, 52.9 for Sagan and for Corrins last time by. So this is gonna be easy picking, I think, for Ellis once he gets there.
So the top 5 not decided yet, but everybody in front of that, I think 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, they're pretty solidly in place, almost 10 seconds apart, cleanly between all of them. At least 10 seconds apart, I should say.
The brakes into turn 1. Ellis continues to close that gap. This is probably going to be the only battle that really sparks up here in the last couple laps. I'm keeping an eye on the 613 racing car, the Alpha with Miguel Souza back in 16th. There's also potential for some drama there. But you see that the smoke off Sagan's car in the 883, that is a weakness, I think, for Ellis that he will see and to get ready to pounce. 1.4 is the gap now.
I think by this point, next lap, it'll be either nose to tail, if not maybe Ellis's position. You see Matt Corrins is really running away from both of these drivers just a little bit. I think he's pretty consistent to Ellis, so I don't know that Ellis will have the opportunity to catch Corrins with only 17 minutes remaining. But he's definitely going to try. You can bet that.
I don't think Ellis has been as consistent as Corrins in the closing laps, but he might be a little faster overall. You see, last time by, Alex Ellis' lap was 152.9 that time through, and for Corrins was 151.9. So they sort of swapped lap times last time through. But I think Sagan is going to have to get real busy out the mirrors here because Ellis is now only a second back. And while all this is happening, Alessandrini's extended the race lead up to almost 10 seconds again. And so now you have to start wondering, if we end this race with a 20-second lead, do you think in hindsight they should have just taken tires?
It's tough to say. That's basically where they were already. I mean, they had 15 seconds deficit between the two of them when they pitted. so it's probably a wash more than it is anything. But it did make us excited for a little bit of a little bit there in the middle. It made things interesting for us to watch. I think if anything, it might have put the 13 back towards De Benedetto, because look at the gaps between those two. It's only 20 seconds right now. If that number 13 had sat on pit lane for another 20 to 25 seconds, that could be a race for third. So if anything, I think the Morad machine made the right call.
There's Sagan and Alex Ellis, 6th and 7th. As they work through the exit of the stadium section here. 16 minutes to go. Remember, Alex Ellis had the penalty after Road America, involved in a collision exiting turn number 3 with a lap car, and ended their race there. Came back at Sebring, had a pretty strong run there. And today, in a position to pick up a couple spots here at the end, and that time through swap back to a 51.7, the quickest of anyone on the racetrack, faster even than our race leader.
And this is going to be interesting because they have lap traffic to navigate as well. The car just in front, 2 cars up the road, the white and black Porsche is lapped traffic to deal with. I think that's Pirelli in the number 2.
That is, I believe that is the 613, no, who is that? Oh yes, the 613 Racing Alpha, Miguel Salza.
There it is. Okay, so they've got to navigate this driver as well. Down the back straight, I don't know that they'll have the opportunity to clear unless he gets out of the way completely, but now it's a battle. That's for 5th, for 6th again, and Ellis. So again, flashing the lights, letting the lap traffic know he wants to cut through.
Not given the spot, no, not required here. Blue flag's just advisory, not mandatory.
Sagan was pretty slow through the chicane.
You heard the traction control kick in there just a touch, and Alex Ellis is ready to pounce. The car is going to move over. Lap car moving over to driver's right. Is that to move out of the way or to defend? Looks like it's more of a defensive line than anything.
I don't know that that's a good call. He's got a couple of really ragged drivers behind Ellis with a massive lockup, and a little bit of lockup for Sagan down into turn number 1 as well. Both of them make mistakes, almost 3 wide up into turn 2.
Ellis is going to try to tuck in a little tighter. Car wobbles under power. Now back on the brakes. A little bit tighter turn in here, and going to try to size up a run down to turn 6. Car spun off. That's the 66 car again for Scott McGuire. Troublesome day. He jumped in the car and drops down the order even more. It's tense moments here, the final 15 minutes. Marc-Andre Sagan defending well, but is he going to be able to hang on? Ellis is he's faster, but not by a ton, so he might be able to hold him off for a couple laps. I don't think he'll be able to do it for the rest of the race, but he might be able to delay the inevitable.
Yeah, we haven't seen a real proper mano-a-mano battle like this since the first stint, really. Maybe even midway through the first stint when the field kind of spread out just a little bit. Alex Ellis shows the nose at the inside, trying to rattle Marc-Andre Sagan. But going back to that thought, remember how hard it is to pass here. It's pretty easy to defend. It's really hard to pass. And so Alex Ellis just has to maintain that pressure. He's got 13.5 minutes, which is a long time, really. That's at least, what, 7 laps? 7, maybe even 8. That's plenty of time for him to wrap. Nope, just going to move him.
And they're both going to go off, and Sagan does a great job collecting it and gets back on course with a cut track penalty, and that was Ellis with quite a what you want to call that there, Tom, but that's
I would call it the punt, really. I mean, between the punt that he did to lap traffic and that one, I don't know that I have a lot of respect for that kind of move from that driver, but he's going to take it anyway, and looks like he's going to charge along and like it didn't happen.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, he might get a little bit of. He did actually give the spot back.
Okay, that's good to see. Good to see.
I was going to say he might have been told to give it back more than anything, but we'll see. He's going to have to try this all over again. He's still faster, and that's the thing about something like that. There, Tom, is there's no need to punt somebody. You're faster. Just pass him.
Exactly, yeah, you got plenty of time to breathe. You got plenty of time you just got to read the body language of the car in front, especially now that you have no hope of catching the next car up the road. He might have been more focused on Corrins, but now he knows it's pretty hopeless to catch Corrins after that kind of exchange with how much time they lost in giving the position back and all that. So just read the body language of Sagan's car, figure out where your strengths are, and capitalize.
Well, luckily, both those drivers escaped without much damage, and they didn't really give up anything to the driver behind. That's Tony Kloosterman back in 8th place and 29 seconds behind this fight, so there's no real danger there. I guess they're going to try the same thing all over again. Alex Ellis will have to give this a second try.
And he's doing exactly what we just talked about. I think he's kind of reading the situation, figuring out where am I actually going to be stronger rather than just trying to get through at all costs. You see Corrins has now cleared another bit of lap traffic up ahead. So now this is really just the two of them on the track all by themselves with no other factors. Maybe a bit of front end damage. I don't see much front end damage or damage on either car really.
No, I think Ellis just has a slight scrape. I don't think it's anything to worry about. Into the final corner here, 11.5 minutes to go. About 7 laps left for the race leader. Ellis got a really strong run on corner exit here, but I don't think it's strong enough to pull up alongside in turn 1.
We'll have a look either way. Marc-André again goes to the middle of the track and picks the opportunity to cover pretty much anything here. A little bit more lockup between both of them. Over-under for Ellis. Puts the power down. Well covered by Sagan.
Yeah, that was a good job as a defensive strategy to track out right in front of Ellis so he couldn't throttle up. Now down the inside again. That's an aggressive slide on the brakes. Lock it up. Can he make the pass here? I don't think so.
Oh, he's going to try. He's got the outside line. He uses up one of those 1Xs and actually keeps it on the track nicely. But look at Sagan. He gets a good, clean exit and is still continuing to defend this position. This is spectacular defense from really solid offense for the last lap.
Yep, and whoa, that's tight again for Alex Ellis on the attack here. But he has to be real cautious. If he was told to give the spot back last time and didn't just do it on his own accord, he's probably already under the gun from the race stewards. Lock up there for Sagan. Ellis has to jump on the brakes.
Well, and Sagan was setting up for a good run out of the corner, and unfortunately, the entry speed messed up from Sagan, blocked his exit as well. So I don't know that was intentionally well defended, but he certainly put the car at the exact spot that Alex Ellis was planning to be. Now looks up the inside, it's going to dive.
Here he goes. Can he get it slowed down? Almost a touch there. Sagan still holds the inside. Ellis around the outside now. Can he hang tough? Now a drag race to the chicane, and who's going to lift here first? I don't think either of them are going to.
No, this is going to be so hard. This is not a double file chicane by any measure. They have to work together at this point. Ellis up the inside, deep on the brakes, keeps it on the track, and finally picks up the spot.
Yes, again, I think just had to relinquish that. And I'm not sure he's going to have the pace to respond. So move Ellis finally through to 6th. We'll keep the cameras on him here for another moment, just in case things get spicy again, because Sagan got a pretty decent run on corner exit.
Just up the road, though, while we were watching all this excitement, somehow we have a battle for third forming, I think, as well. DiBenedetto and Roberts have come together. That's well up the track. Some
damage to DiBenedetto. Oh. We heard that he had spun a couple laps ago and got back rolling, but I didn't see that he had damage to the car, so that wing is definitely not working as efficiently as it should be, and that's going to bring the grid engineering car, Christopher Roberts, right into the mix here. We could see a swap for the podium.
And we didn't expect this at all. So there's wing damage, but also fairly significant left rear body damage to the number 8 cars. You see them tracked out of the hairpin. Look at all that body damage around the left rear wheel. I wonder how much is that pace. I mean, you might have lap times in front of you more than I do, but perhaps the 8 car is just well off pace, and maybe Roberts ran him down. Yeah,
53.7 last time by. That's way off pace, and a bobble there through the Schumacher S's as well. Roberts was a 52.4, so definitely trending faster and should make pretty quick work of him here.
Got 8 minutes to do it, though, so he's got to be clean and decisive about it. He sets up for a good run down the back straightaway, and I think the aero damage on the number 8 is going to exacerbate this closing speed between the two of them. Roberts looks to the outside, and I think he's just going to motor him.
Here he comes. Drag race towards the chicane, and Christopher Roberts is through to 3rd. Justin DiBenedetto for SPI Racing will have to relinquish the spot. Going to try to get it back on the inside here in the final corner. Can't do it. Roberts going to throttle up. Oh, a bit of a slide there. Not sure it's completely over. Maybe it is.
I have to imagine it's pretty close to sealed, and that's unfortunate because I mean, we kind of locked in the top 10, or sorry, the top 4. They were 10 seconds apart between the two of them, and now all of a sudden we have a position change. So good effort for the grid engineering car. We didn't expect that car in the top 3 at the start of this race.
No, and it moved forward very nicely. It looks like Benedetto is trying to give everything he's got. Daniel Salmon, I believe, just had another spin. Let's go back. I don't know if I should say another. I think he just had a spin. Was coming through the Schumacher S's, and I think just catches the gravel there and just whoop. Oh, he got the wall pretty hard, actually.
Oof. Yeah, that was big.
Let's have another look. Just catches the gravel with the right side tires, Tom, and it slips.
so hard to catch these cars once they're gone. I mean, you're traveling at such high speed. That's probably 130 miles an hour when you're exiting that chicane. So the fact that it even pulled away from that without much damage is pretty good to see, but they're now just in front of the overall leader.
There is DJ Alessandrini for Grid Life RWB, teammates with Austin Cobb, who started on pole and qualified the car, drove out to a 15-second lead over Adam Crane for VRS Satellite Racing Blue. Grid Life RWB took tires, spent a minute and a half on pit lane. VRS Satellite Racing Blue elected not to take tires. They skipped a whole bunch of time on pit road, had about a 12-second lead that dwindled. Alessandrini took the lead away from Daniel Morad after the driver swap, and Alessandrini's never looked back. They have 5 laps to go this time through.
And the question I'm starting to ask is whether Matt Corrins can catch Justin DiBenedetto there for 4th and 5th. If DiBenedetto is that far off pace, Corrins' pace looks pretty good there for the Apex V2R 880 squad. 52.5s if the 8 car is continuing to lap in the 53s. It's going to be pretty close, but it might be a little bit too far.
Well, 53.9, 54s for DiBenedetto is going to be even slower than I think you even thought. So I think Matt Corrins has a really good opportunity to jump up into 3rd place, or 4th place rather. You see him at the back of that shot here approaching. So we might see another pass for position here in the closing laps of the Apex V2R Race Sim Canada Canadian Endurance Series. Remember that on Facebook, the Race Sim Canada Facebook page, there is a vote for the final race of the season. That will be a vote of either Canadian Motorsports or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, COTA, Hockenheim, Daytona, or Spa. You can vote yourself at which round you'd like to see for the season finale on the Facebook page. Drive-through for the number 17 for the Harris Fellows team car. That was exceeding.
No, the 17 is Ellis.
Yes. Oh, it is. Drive-through for the number 17 Harris Fellows exceeding. I think he meant
12.
The 12 car. Yes, the Sam Fellows car for exceeding track limits or like excessive use of track limits.
Huh.
But doesn't hit pit lane just yet.
Interesting. I also noticed that back a little further in the field for 8th, Tony Klusterman picked up the position from the Apex V2R 881 of Fitzsimmons. I think they had swapped spots.
Yeah, this happened a little while ago, but let's go just touch on Klusterman. You know, whoa, he goes to catch some gravel, sends it across the surface there. Klusterman and this entire Never Quit Racing team, they never quit. I mean, their team name says it, but Tom, every race they enter, they just continue to get better as the race goes on, and they always finish higher than they start.
Yeah, and the car's clean, too. I mean, that's a really important point. We've seen a number of cars, especially now at the front, that is heavily influencing our podium positions as Corrins continues to even close in on Justin DiBenedetto. But these guys here, yeah, they're running 8th, but that car is super clean. And they are doing a spectacular job with not the fastest raw lap times throughout the entire race. That's what it's about.
So Klusterman continues to chug away down in 8th place. Up to 3rd place, we mentioned that Christopher Roberts moved into the 3rd spot. DiBenedetto down to 4th. Matt Corrins in 5th. And Matt Corrins, again, lapping about a 1.5 seconds faster than the number 8 SPI Racing car. And I think 4 seconds, 3 laps to go next time by. That's going to be a tight one, but he might be able to do it.
It's going to be a dash to the line for sure. I think the white flag, both cars will be within close quarters of each other, and then it's just a matter of how well can Justin DiBenedetto defend.
We actually might be, let's see here.
We're 1 lap shorter than we thought.
I think we might be. This should be actually 2 laps to go. Yes, this should be 2. So Alessandrini coming to 2 to go. So that's going to make Matt Corrins' job a lot harder because he's got a 3.6 second gap to make up. He's going to have to be a little faster. There's a lap car between. Oh no, that is the 8 car right in front.
Yeah, it's the next car on the road, and if you set it at 1.5 seconds faster than from one to the next, I don't know, 3.6 seconds. That math is very, very tight.
Yeah, well, it's 3 now. So it came down pretty significantly in the high downforce middle sector of this racetrack, where you're spending a lot of your rear wing aero on making these high-speed corners. Now down to is it going to be under 3 seconds by the time they come to the line? It should be 2.5. Yeah, I think Matt Corrins will get there. The question is, Tom, once you get there, you got to pass him too.
And then they both actually have lap traffic to deal with. I think that is the, what is that, the one of the RSC team of Salvatore.
Yes. Just
up the road a bit. Unfortunately for De Benedetto, he's the one that has to navigate it first. He's the one with the weaker race car right now.
Lock up for Matt Corrins. He's definitely pushing to make it. And there's the Grid Life RWB car of DJ Alessandrini coming to the white flag next time by. Timing and scoring will update once we get there. But Benedetto really struggling with this damage that he's got, and the car is slow. You see the headlights flashing. He's feeling frantic here, Tom. You can tell that he is in a rush.
Oh, and the one's not going to let him go. No, the lapped car will not make this easy. I don't know that he's losing much time. Now he is. He's really got to be compromising his exit here just a bit. Almost contact between the two of them. Finally clears.
Yeah, that gave up a whole bunch of time, and that's now 2.3 for Matt Corrins, and we're not even halfway through this lap, so he's going to be about a second. Whoa, did he lock up and go off? Locked up, stayed on though. DJ Alessandrini coming on through. This is going to be white flag this time. With 47 seconds to go, we'll be coming back to the checkers next time by, and for Matt Corrins, it's 1.7 to Justin De Benedetto for a fourth spot.
And now he's got the problem of the lap car between the two. The lap car did not make it easy for De Benedetto, so it's only fair to not make it easy for Corrins, but he does. He does. Look at this.
Wow. Makes his life a little easier. 1.6 heading into the chicane, and they're going to have a whole other lap to contest this. And now, because the car is getting bigger in the mirror for De Benedetto, that's a prime opportunity to make a mistake. So as long as he doesn't make a mistake, he might be able to run back to the line nose to tail. But as soon as he locks up or does anything silly, Tom, Matt Corrins is going to drive right by.
Yeah, he needs the perfect lap right now. And I think at the line, what was it, about 1.6? Ooh, there's the first mistake from the number 8, Justin De Benedetto, with severe damage on that car. Had third place locked down a couple of laps ago, but all of a sudden finds himself struggling to maintain a top 5.
And DJ Alessandrini sweeping through the last couple sectors here. This started with Austin Cobb qualifying and just driving away, Tom. And Austin Cobb set the stage for Alessandrini to just jump in here. What a drive, though, by both of these two.
Yeah, for both of them. Again, Austin Cobb pit with 15 seconds deficit to the next car on track. Alessandrini doubles it up to 33 seconds over a floundering Daniel Morad with very, very worn tires. A great stint from Morad still to maintain the second position. But look, even the Ferrari perfectly clean on the apex to the start-finish line to take the win.
DJ Alessandrini and Austin Cobb, Grid Life RWB victorious here at the Nürburgring. They go to victory lane for the second round in a row. The only non-Canadian team here is going to claim the checkered flag. Daniel Morad of the VRS Satellite Racing blue car, they're going to come home in second, but the battle right now is for fourth. Justin De Benedetto and Matt Corrins here. Tom, coming down to the wire.
Corrins got there. Look at this. He's going to have a great draft down the back straightaway. De Benedetto makes a mistake, and last time De Benedetto was in this position, he got motored straight past. Roberts just drove by him down the back straight. Corrins is going to do the same. Look at this.
Here he comes, side by side. De Benedetto slid, and here comes Matt Corrins. Takes the spot, goes into fourth place. Now can he hang on to it for the last couple sectors on the white flag lap? SPI Racing's down one spot.
Heartbreaking for a team that had third place so under control, but now third goes to Christopher Roberts for Grid Engineering. They came from not on the podium to claim that bronze medal, and Matt Corrins celebrating the fourth position over a probably pretty frustrated Justin De Benedetto, but a top 5, nothing to be upset about. Woo.
Alex Ellis finishes the race and then finishes the car. Marc-Andre Seguin comes home in 7th. Tony Kloosterman, Pete Fitzsimmons, and Sam Fellows will be the last couple drivers to come across the start-finish line here at the end of the race. Here's have a quick look at our race results and have a look at how things finished out here. Whoops, that's not the button I wanted to press. Let's press the right button and do it the right way this time. On the top of the board, Grid Life RWB, Alessandrini and Cobb. Tom, they got it done to no one's surprise.
Maybe to no one's surprise, but also to many's frustration. Don't expect this to be so easy at Watkins Glen next week or next month when we come back. These guys want to take that Grid Life car down, no matter how it happens. But the VRS Satellite Blue team, a very clean race, took the gamble, didn't quite pay off, but it didn't hurt them either. They came home in second over Grid Engineering for third. Apex V2R's 880 car fourth, and SPI Racing falls to fifth in the closing laps, but still a good race for the 8.
And then looking down the rest of the order, Event Matrix, Average J Racing, RSCC team. The big whoops today, though, Tom, I think is the 66 of MC Motorsports down in 17th place. That was a missed opportunity today. I think they had a better car than they finished.
Yeah, it is, and I'm not quite sure exactly where it went wrong because it didn't seem to go much better once they put the good tires on the car. So it might have just been a case of once it started to go south, they just couldn't recover. But that yellow Porsche, I mean, don't count it out for the rest of the rounds. It's always shown flashes of brilliance.
All right, I got to head back over to the other Discord, Tom. So I think we're going to wrap up for you, and you can get on the road and get on your way. I'll take care of the interviews and wrap this up. But final thoughts here on the Race in Canada Canadian Endurance Series round 3 before we head to round 4 at the Glen in a couple months, or a month or so.
Well, it's just such a fast track. I can't wait to see how that one pans out, and especially talk to a couple of these drivers for them to explain how the race panned out. I really am curious to hear the thought process specifically behind the VRS Blue Corvette's car for taking no tires to see just how much of a long shot that might have been.
All right, Tom, thanks for joining me today. We're going to see you in about a month for the Watkins Glen race. I'm going to head on over to the interview booth and talk to the drivers, and that will be it for the day. Going to jump now and chat with the first couple of drivers, and we'll talk with our race winner, DJ Alessandrini, and Austin Cobb from Grid Life RWB. Guys, congratulations. Maybe to no one's surprise, but I think the surprise for everyone was how much you guys won that race by. 15-second lead coming into the pits, and it expanded to 33 seconds by the end of the race. Guys, take me through your night.
I mean, Austin is just a monster tonight. The second place team, they did a gutsy strategy and didn't take tires, but I mean, when Austin came in, we were below 50%. So if we went back out on the tires that we had, we would have been having punctures and stuff by the end of the race. So really weird strategy from them. We almost think it was a mistake. So bring it up in the interview because I'm curious what their thoughts are on that. But like, honestly, like all I had to do was just cut some practice laps, which that's what they basically were because Austin was out of control tonight.
Austin, you went out and qualified the car, drove away to a 15-second race lead. Was that just sort of therapeutic to just drive off into the sunset without anybody behind you, anybody in front of you? Was that the lizard brain that DJ always talks about?
Was for sure. So you know, in quali it was looking pretty good, but I fully expected it to be a fight the entire stint. So yeah, felt pretty good to have put in a good bit of work on the setup. Was testing with running some lower cambers just to see if we could do the double stint, but it really just turned out making a really consistent car for the entire stint. Worked out well, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, you guys had an amazing day here. We head to Watkins Glen on May 16th. Guys, how confident do you feel about going 3 for 4 and getting the job done at WGI?
I guess we'll see. I think DJ and I are both really comfortable at Watkins Glen. I know I really enjoy that track, and you know, I'll let DJ speak for himself on that.
I think we've seen the tracks where the Ferrari tends to have its strongest. I think this track, the Ferrari was particularly strong. Watkins Glen, I don't know GTE cars well enough to know exactly how it will play out. So you might see more of a fight next time around, which me and Austin will both welcome that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for talking. Congratulations on your second win of the season and your third podium of the year. We'll see you at Watkins Glen in May 16th.
Yep,
thanks, Kyle. See you all next time.
Move on now to our second place team. That was the team, of course, with Daniel Morad in control of the VRS Satellite Racing blue car. Daniel, you came on through after your teammate Adam Crane relinquished the car. Didn't take tires. Thoughts on that strategy and how did that work out for you?
Wait, we didn't take tires? I thought we took tires.
Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't know. But either way, you saved 30 seconds on the
I'm just joking.
pit lane.
Of course we didn't take tires. No, it was a bold strategy. We didn't have the pace to the Ferrari today. I think the Ferrari really suited this track, and the guys up front did a great job managing the race. They were quick, consistent. It was difficult. It was always going to be a difficult task to try to keep them behind for 33 minutes. But I said, buckle up. We're just going to send it. And I lasted about 3 corners before he overtook me. Didn't last too long. But yeah, it was still good fun. Really, really cool to join the series halfway through. Really well run series, and yeah, thanks to Sam for letting me join in this late in the season, and also Adam Crane, phenomenal job with the VRS Satellite Racing team. The setup was on point for the Corvette.
Well, glad to have you here with us. Of course, we head to Watkins Glen for our 4th round of the season on May 16th. How do you feel about Watkins Glen? Is it a place that you like, and how do you feel like this C8R will compete there?
Yeah, I think we'll have a strong package for Watkins. We're going to have to do a little bit more experimentation with the tire strat and see. Also, just the temps kind of threw us off a little bit. They were really, really high to start, and as they dropped off, I think it would have maybe worked, but it was so high, 45C at the beginning of the race, and not a lot of track usage. So Watkins is a great one of my favorites globally. I've been to 70 plus circuits in the world internationally, and Watkins is right up there in my top 3. So looking forward to it, and yeah, can't wait to get back in the series.
All right, Daniel, thanks for joining us here tonight. Congratulations on your 2nd place result. We'll see you at the Glen.
Cool, thanks guys.
Thank you. Moving on now to Chris Roberts, who brought the Grid Engineering car home in 3rd. Nick McMillan, the other driver that joined you tonight. Chris, tonight qualified well, ran even better, and a podium finish. Your thoughts on tonight's race?
Hey Kyle, it was it was an up and down race, man, for the Grid Engineering Porsche. Nick did a great job in stint 1, keeping the nose clean. We got into some battles early on, like ended up 10th place at one point, marched our way back up to 7th. And then with a little pit strategy, we took 3 tires instead of 4. We left the right rear tire off because it had probably the least amount of tire wear. So that actually helped us out, put us out in the pits off pit road, like basically at 5th place, and a little bit of luck on our side. We took home 3rd, so happy.
It was a really strong run. We head to Watkins Glen in a couple weeks for our 4th round. How do you feel about that racetrack? Do you feel like you could get another podium out there?
Well, I think podium's all we're looking for, as long as Austin and DJ are running the Ferrari, man. Those guys are untouchable. So I would be happy with a podium at Watkins Glen. Love that track, so looking forward to it.
All right, Chris. Hey, thanks for talking to us. Congratulations. We'll see you at the Glen in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. That's going to do it for the Race in Canada Canadian Endurance Series, round number 3 from the Nürburgring. I'm Kyle Heyer, who was joined by Tom O'Gorman tonight. Of course, he's on his way home after a long weekend of racing down at Mid-Ohio, so let him go a little bit early. Our next round is going to be in 1 month, May 16th at Watkins Glen. And next on SimTV tonight, in a half an hour, the Coca-Cola of Kokomo Indy Elite Series, the Catalyst 317 Indy 500, a full distance race coming right up at 7:15 Eastern. We'll see you there.